But basically, it was this, oh my God, how did we let this man become president, right? Like, he has the nuclear codes, right? Like how do we let this man who, can't spell the word coffee on Twitter, to have the nuclear codes, right?
Hey there. Welcome to the Gluten-Free Organic Thoughts Podcast, where you are encouraged to express your natural thoughts and views through casual, meaningful conversations that hopefully can lead to learning and understanding new perspectives. To find out more info, visit www.gfothoughts.com. Now, here are your hosts, Michael Wong and Robert Din. We hope you enjoy this episode.
Hey everyone, welcome back to Gluten-Free Organic Thoughts Podcast. I'm Robert Din, one of your co-hosts. A few weeks back, we had on Tara, who was a conservative, and we wanted to bring on, we've had a lot of requests to bring on someone who's on the liberal side. So we have Brittany here today to tell her side as a Democrat. And as always, we have our other co-host, Michael Wong.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another great episode. Brittany, welcome.
Thank you. Than's for having me on.
Welcome.
Joining us. Well, if this is a good timing, election's over. You're probably catching up some sleep now.
Yes,
is it over
definitely.
though? Is it over?
It is. It is over.
We don't know. We
don't know yet.
I mean, maybe
totally
as this is coming out, it might be officially over. Correct. But right now, there's still a lot of litigation going on. So
there is, but it's pretty clear that the popular vote and the which obviously doesn't really matter in our system, but
it does not. Yeah,
college has spoken. So
that's good though. So Brittany,
first, what we're gonna do is ask what everyone's drinking.
Yep.
All right. Let me go first. I'll go first. I have a mimosa here. Nice. Usually, I'm drinking sparkling wine, but I thought I'd add some orange juice in. Last night we had some Manhattans, and I'm like still trying to recover.
You need that vitamin C too. You got to keep fighting off COVID.
Sunday fun day, man.
That's right. Brittany, what are you drinking?
I am drinking. It's actually a Pinot Noir from Oregon Earth. I have the whole bottle here.
Oh,
wait,
Oregon
hey, Brittany,
Pinot.
have you tapped out your collection yet? Wine yet?
I still have a few. So I actually lived in California for 4 years. I brought back with me
a lot of wine.
51 bottles of wine.
51 bottles.
From California to Florida, because I grew up in Central Florida, but when I moved back, from California, I was east of San Francisco. I brought back about 51 bottles of wine.
Wow.
You should see her house, man. Let me tell you, she had like closet hidden, all the shelves and everything. Like
there was wine everywhere.
Wait, how long ago?
That was just the way I liked it.
How long ago was this?
I moved back December 2016, so just after the 2016 election.
Yeah.
You moved back and I moved there. That was the exact. I moved there December 2016.
That's awesome.
We just traded places.
That is crazy. Yeah, we probably caught like the opposite flights
on the flight. Yeah.
Well, yeah. So I mean, now with the election being over, how do you feel? Do you think do you think the jobs?
I mean, I feel really relieved personally. I almost hate to say it, right? But there was definitely like a weight lifted off my chest. So I ran the Seminole County Democratic Party for the past 2 years, but I've been involved for the past 4. I just dove in when I moved back from California and really got involved. And so I'm just super excited that it's done.
In California, were you involved in California? Were you involved with the Democrats?
I was not. I feel like when I moved to California, I did become more aware of the different political parties and kind of the activism that you could do. But honestly, when I lived in California, I really felt like there was nothing I could do. Now, being involved now, I know that like you can help from anywhere in the world, right?
Why did you feel that there was nothing you could do in California versus
I'm just wondering,
Florida?
So, I mean, California obviously is a very blue state, right? Like it's just, it's not, unless it's like Ronald Reagan running for office, the likelihood in California is not very good. So in California, with the Electoral College, a lot of people really feel like their vote doesn't count if they're in a really blue or really red state. It's those swing states like Florida, even Michigan, even Georgia now. That's where your votes are going to count.
Gotcha.
That's
And
true.
so I mean, obviously, this has nothing to do with your career, right? You're a marketing
No.
manager.
Yeah, this is just a volunteer position I took on in my spare time. Air quotes there. Yeah. I just really dove in. I really wanted to make a difference. I do marketing for a living. I do digital marketing for a marketing firm and print house. So it was definitely a little different diving into the political sphere.
Gotcha. So after the 2016 election, did you feel like, okay, you know what, I'm gonna get involved more, or was it beforehand? You already kind of thought about it to a certain degree. You figure I'm in California, you know.
Yeah. So I think when I moved from Florida to California, it was kind of an eye opener because there were a lot of things that were just better. I hate to kind of say that, but for example, healthcare. California even has their own healthcare system so that if you don't have healthcare as a resident of California, you can actually get on their healthcare system. Whereas in Florida, our Medicaid system is not expanded. We don't have that kind of support to really take care of our people. And so I definitely saw that and saw the difference that it does make, living in an environment where people actually care about their surroundings and the people next to them. Whereas, I grew up in Florida. I'm born and raised in the Orlando area. I went away for a few years to Gainesville for college, but other than that, Orlando was my whole life until I moved to California.
So growing up though, I guess, is your family very politically involved or no? Just wondering.
No. So okay, it's kind of funny. So my dad was a lifelong Republican, nice. And my mother is pretty far left.
Wow.
They both were raised Catholic. I was raised Catholic, but we, so it was kind of interesting. So growing up, I'd always hear them argue, and one of the main arguments that they would constantly have was about toll roads, which is, sounds silly nowadays, right?
Wait, hang on. Did you believe in toll roads though? Do you believe in toll roads? I'm curious.
Do I believe in toll roads? Really good question. I think that there are definitely some problems, especially with the toll roads in Central Florida. Anybody who's ever driven through here can understand that and how much you get charged just driving through there.
Oh yeah,
it's crazy because the toll roads never go down. You use that money to go build a road and it never goes away. I thought that was just until they finish it.
Hey, and many of them were supposed to be that way.
I-4's coming with toll road right now soon. I think
I-4 is going to be a toll road?
In the middle,
So they're adding in toll lanes into I-4. So it'll be it's kind of like in California where you have those fast track lanes.
Yeah. But those exits are limited though. So it purposely drive people to Lake Mary so that way you don't exit downtown. You have to drive through it, So it's supposed to minimize traffic.
Oh my God, just more taxes all around.
Yeah, I mean, if we just had a public transit system that would, resolve some of these issues, which again, for anybody who's ever lived in Florida, our public transit here is
horrible. It's just horrible. Let me tell you, I've taken the buses. Okay, let me tell you, it's not consistent enough where that it makes sense. You know what I mean?
No.
And it's cheap. Don't get me wrong, it's cheap. It's just not consistent enough.
Right. Exactly.
I took the bus one time, and I was like,
No,
never again.
No, in Orlando.
Oh,
and
really?
I'm just like, oh my God. Yeah, it's just horrible.
It's free half the time. It's free in downtown to go to soccer games. It's free a lot of the places, to be honest. If you want to go to the whole downtown area, it's free. You could go east and west.
It's free for those of privilege. That's what you have to remember.
If you're in downtown, right? If you're paying for downtown, then it's free. But then I was at near UCF, and I was going down to downtown. And that wasn't free, but
that takes forever, right?
It takes forever. It was the worst ride of my life.
I think one time I had to take the train, the Sunrail, to go to Sand Lake and take the bus to go to the airport, right? That actually wasn't that bad. I thought it would take about 45 minutes. It took me 30 minutes, but you got to time it properly though. But they purposely do really well where the bus comes to when the train arrives, and they wait 10 minutes just to keep people to get off, which is kind of nice.
I'm just waiting for Waymo to just have their stuff everywhere, like the automated cars to go everywhere, take you wherever you want. So y'all sharing cars, but it's just easier than the transit system.
So Brittany, growing up, I guess, did you have a side? Like you chose mom, you chose dad, or dad?
So growing up, I mean, I just kind of listened to them argue, and I wasn't really interested in politics, right? Like, I didn't really even understand that it's like, my dad was like, "Oh, we need toll roads to reduce congestion, and people who can afford it." And my mom was like, "No, they put toll roads through, disenfranchised and it creates all these problems, and it's not good. We're all taxpayers, that kind of thing." So so growing up, it just was kind of back and forth, and it was like every time I went to go see my grandma, we had this argument about toll roads. um, but growing up, I really wasn't interested in like one side or the other. But then when I did register to vote at age 18, clearly I had to pick a side. In Florida, we're a closed state, so we do have to pick a side if you want to vote in the primaries, essentially.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
So
is that not every state?
No, every state.
No. Yeah, every state kind of acts differently, but Florida is a closed primary state. So you have to be a registered Democrat or a registered Republican in order to vote for those candidates. A lot of other states will do things like they allow the people that aren't registered to either party, they'll allow them to just pick which ballot they want, whether it's Democrats or Republicans, or they'll give them all of the choices on one ballot. There's all sorts of options, but that's not what we do here in Florida.
But if you're registered, like if you're in another state and you're registered, then you just get that ballot, right? That's usually how it works. You can't be a Republican and then go vote in the Democratic primary.
So some are open. Like if it's an open primary, you can vote for whoever you want.
Correct. Yeah.
But
after primary is a different story though. Yeah.
There's so many different types of primaries. There's open primaries, semi-open primaries, jungle primaries are kind of another one.
What's jungle primary?
Jungle primary is actually what was just on our ballot here in Florida, and thank God it did not pass, because everybody thought of it as
it was one of those amendment things.
Yes, it was amendment 3. I
said no to that, I think.
Good. Yes.
For even what was it doing?
So it sounded good in theory, right? It was like, it really explained it like, people that are not affiliated with a party get a vote, but that's not what it was.
The wording was so weird. The wording was really weird. It was really tricky, the wording.
Yeah, so they definitely made it sound like it was a good thing. The state legislature who put it on the ballot, or actually this one I think was, I don't remember who supported this, because both Democrats and Republicans were against this.
Yeah.
So it was bizarre. But basically what it would do is it would send the top 2 vote getters to those are the 2 that would go through from the primary to the general election. So if we had this in 2018, since we had so many different Democrats running for governor, we would have the top 2 vote getters would have been Ron DeSantis and Adam Putnam. So it would have only given us the option in the state of Florida for 2 Republicans. So in a state that's like, basically 50-50 Democrats and Republicans, that is not a good option because it does not represent the people. So we're very glad that it did not pass here. Sure. But that would have been a jungle primary, actually, which is
interesting. So I didn't know that was called jungle primary, because the way I read that, the reason why I think I chose no, to be honest with you, is because this sounds super weird and fishy, and I'm like, the way they word this, I'm like, this makes no sense at all. And I actually looked it up. Now, I don't know how even that got on the ballot, because not a lot of people supported that.
Right. No, like I said,
and
Republicans alike did not support this. Yeah. There were a lot of people pushing for open primaries that were supporting it, but again, it's not something that makes
for a swing state. I don't think that.
It's crazy, right? Because you're gonna have like people on either side go to the other side and just vote for like the worst candidate, and then we get 2 really bad candidates.
Yeah.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. And so it's kind of playing chicken with our election system in the state of Florida.
So Brittany, growing up though, now that you grew up Catholic, and with 2 different sides of the family, that pretty much align differently. What are some of the values that you still install with you, right? What are the top 3 values? Just wondering.
Yeah, I mean, for me, a lot of it, and it kind of comes back to these same things. But for me, a lot of it is healthcare and public education. Those are really, I know you said top 3, but I feel like those 2 things encompass so much. Healthcare for me is just such a vital piece of it all.
Yeah.
And I think that would make an immediate impact in so many people's lives. And maybe that's where, maybe that Catholic upbringing kind of has something is like taking care of our people, right?
Yeah.
And I mean, I can, I don't know how deep we want to get into this, but for me,
we'll dive into it a little bit later.
Okay, got it.
You mentioned two: education, healthcare, and what else? What's the third one?
Public education, healthcare, and then to be honest, women's rights. I mean, for me, that's a big piece. When my mom tells me these stories about when she was growing up in the 70s, where she wasn't even able to have a credit card in her own name without her father or her husband's signature. She was getting paid 25 cents an hour less than her male counterpart, and they were both age 18, working at a retail store. And it was just because he was a man, he automatically got paid more. So I mean,
obviously there are a lot of stuff that needs to be caught up on, because at the same time, it is 2020. You would think that, things were being caught up by now, but we're still finding things, especially in the work industry, in the corporate world. So
yeah, definitely.
And
sure. Obviously, the justice system is a big issue as well. But I think, if public education, if women's rights, if healthcare were things that were taken care of, a lot of that would disappear from the justice side.
That's interesting, because I feel like, you mentioned earlier, right? Like California is done well with healthcare, but you still see like the whole justice system being so weird there. You know what I mean? It's kind of like,
California is not perfect either. Definitely.
Yeah. Actually, they're one of the states that has almost bankrupt almost twice.
Yeah.
It's crazy though.
Yeah. And I mean, it's definitely, obviously I paid a lot more in taxes when I lived in California, but at the same time, I was okay with that, with knowing that, like, people that I knew, my friends and family and their friends and family, and, those people weren't going to die because of a simple disease,
I mean, so you said you were okay playing with that much taxes. So see, for me, I wasn't that okay, because I wish the government, like for example, the state government get receipt for every dime that they spend. So I knew.
I just think there was a lot of like misallocation of funds, misuse. Like, we're paying so much in taxes, and it should feel a lot better.
Correct.
Yeah. And I think you see that a lot when you go to, like, the public transit in California, even, or the roads in California. You think, these should be better taken care of with how much taxes. Or, for example, another one is the cost of housing, right? The cost of housing in California is just
crazy. Yeah,
it's crazy high.
And that's because of the property assessed values issue over there.
Yeah.
Not assessed property value ever unless you're ready to sell your house.
Yeah. So
that's a loophole. It's just mind blowing. But also at the same time, though, it's kind of nice knowing that your house is kind of valued and you pay this tax, because my taxes right now in Orlando, it went up like 28% every year. It's crazy. It's just, and I feel like there should be a fine line between both, right? There should be like, okay, you can't just assess your value because the market value is this much, but you should be able to reassess it where, okay, you know what, based on what's around you, the land, how many schools in there, it should go up maybe 10%, 5-10%, but 20% for me, like in Orange County, it's crazy.
Yeah.
The last 3 years.
There's been some caps that have been on the ballot in Florida, in California too, but there are some like cap increases that do happen. But a lot of times it does vary by county as well.
Yeah. Well, this is a huge issue in South Florida, actually.
Yeah. Oh, definitely. Yeah. Well, and think about just in Orlando, right? I mean, our wages are so low in Central Florida because we're a service-based industry.
Correct. Mm-hmm.
We're focused on, tourism. That is our only industry, essentially, as far as Central Florida economy is concerned.
And this is why it was so hard to keep Florida closed, because of that alone.
Right.
Because there's so many people pinning on those jobs and stuff like that. And it's like, people say that it's easy to shut down everything. No, it's not that it's not that easy. You cannot just say that, hey, just shut everything down, everything will be okay. Because there's a lot of backlash that comes with that, though. So
definitely. And I mean, one thing that's kind of interesting is I actually got laid off in February.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So I got laid off in February from my previous job. So it was right before COVID hit. And I filed for unemployment right away. I did all the paperwork. I was in the system. I got approved. I didn't start my next job until June, which for me, it was kind of nice because it was like
a nice break. Oh.
Yeah. And during COVID and everything. But I did not get my first unemployment check, which, mind you, I was in the system like February. Second week of February. I did not get my first unemployment check until May 5th of that year.
What?
Wow.
May 5th. And I was already in the system. So
That's so great. That's California.
That's what I've heard too. I've heard a lot of stories where people are like, "Oh yeah, I did unemployment, but like it just never came in, or like it's coming super late. Like, what do you do in that 3-4 months?"
They still likely, the state of Florida still likely owes me about $1,000. And
did you file unemployment in California or in Florida though?
No, I was Florida unemployment. I was a Florida employee. So I used to work.
Oh, okay. Because I thought you were working remotely from California. That's why it's
so I was, but I was transferred to I was fully a Florida employee.
Okay. I'm still California.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, that would be, and California's unemployment system is way better. And obviously it would.
No, my friend actually said that he didn't get his unemployment check for until like week 4, something like that too as well.
Well, and like I said, that was I only got 2 checks on May 5th after not having received any money.
That's so crazy.
And my next one, and those were the federal checks. So those weren't even the state checks.
Yeah.
So it was just insane. And, for me, obviously I have the privilege of being okay through that time, but
not many people are like that.
Not many people are like that. I mean, I think about all the service workers that I go to. I mean, for hair, nails, waxing, whatever. Yeah. Like all of those people were out of work.
Paycheck to paycheck too. They live paycheck.
And there's no paycheck. There's no vacation. Time, there's no nothing. I mean, they just
get sick on, you get sick, you're screwed. Like you can't work. It's like they're in like a shitty situation. And the stimulus, I remember the stimulus didn't come in until when? Until May.
Yeah.
Also,
that's when I got it. That was when I got it was May.
It was crazy,
So and because I had made too much in previous years, I didn't actually get the full stimulus.
I didn't get anything. Don't worry.
Yeah.
So
California, most people didn't get anything.
Right.
Anything.
That's a drop in the bucket in California.
Yeah.
That doesn't even cover rent.
I don't know.
Wait a second. That doesn't even cover half of the rent. People don't understand.
Right?
It doesn't cover anything.
Yeah.
Definitely.
New York or California or Seattle, any of those cities, to be honest.
Yeah. And if you're making like 80,000 to 100 in California, that's like nothing. You're like homeless.
That's
basically.
like poverty level.
That's poverty level. Actually, that's actually poverty level for a lot of places.
Yeah.
That's crazy. So, okay, understanding your 3 values, right? I guess, does that always align with the Democrat Party, or does it always align, or does that align with the best person who believes in those values? I'm just wondering for you.
So in my experience, the Democratic Party has come through as the predominant leader of those 3 values.
Gotcha.
I mean, I went to school, all through school in public school, right? Grade school, and then I went off to University of Florida, where I met Michael, and we that was also a public school, and I was there on scholarships and grants, and that's the only reason I was even able to go to college. And so it's definitely that hits home for me. And I feel like, when I'm looking at this, I don't necessarily see Republicans being the stewards of this in any way. It's more, you get what you pay for. Is
it because just this party or the past parties as well? I'm just wondering.
Well, it's definitely gotten more extreme. I would say it's definitely gotten more extreme in the last several years. The Republican Party has always been more financially, more fiscally conservative, right? But at the same time, they have just gone to the extremes lately. My dad, like I said, was a lifelong Republican. He actually decided to switch parties in 2018 and become a Democrat, which was he didn't really want to switch parties, but he felt like the Republican Party just didn't.
But I feel like he did it because of the people, I guess the choices of people, right? But I bet you if the Republican had the right people, though, he would.
Yeah, if Republicans were more moderate, I think he probably would have stayed a Republican. But it was kind of those Tea Party, Trumpster extremists that really made him want to turn away from it.
Well, I mean, I this happened to a lot of other folks as well. I mean, because there are some moderate Republicans that are and they're not between line, right? And the reason why they probably stay Republican because some of the values align with them, But there are between though, and I know personally myself, some of them swapped to the Democrat just because of that type of person that they elected. So
the candidates definitely have a lot to do with it. I mean,
of course.
And we've had pretty bad candidates for a while.
I just feel like it's been okay. I feel like this year's election felt like 2016 to a certain degree again, and I'm like, how are we stuck with these candidates again? And I'm hoping 2024 it's not the same because I'm already seeing that there's a huge I rival new candidates for 2024 very easily. And we'll see how that plays out. But I just feel like overall, like it was a tough choice to just do. People like, okay, do I swallow the blue pill or do I swallow the red pill? It's like, it really is.
And you really had to make a choice, right?
You really had to make a choice.
And I do think it's a little bit kind of unfair. I mean, not that much is fair in politics.
That's true, right?
But it's a little bit unfair to kind of to say something like, I had to make the lesser of two evils or something like that.
It's not true though, and it's like,
that's not how it works. Yeah,
it's not how it works.
But it is how it works. It's how it was. So, it might not be how it should be, but it's how it was.
Yeah, but so Brittany, I'll
when
be
you
honest
look
with
at the extremes, right? You look at the extremes. So, for example, right, you've got Donald Trump, who like literally is just not knowledgeable about our country, about the situations, about what's happening to most people in the United States. And then you look at someone like Joe Biden, who's been doing this for a long time, but obviously he's not perfect either, right? But he's been doing this for a long time. He's very, compassionate towards other people. He wants to continue things that President Obama, started, and to improve things. I feel like there's just it's not on an equal playing field.
So let me ask you this though: do you feel like leading up to this election, right? Did you feel like that if you're on the blue side, like you get your information one way, and then if you're on the red side, you get information one way? There was not really like. I feel like people were living in their own little informative world to a certain degree.
Information bubbles. Yeah.
And I feel like, but it's hard, especially nowadays, to tell sometimes what's real, what's fake, though. And it's sad.
Oh, totally. Yeah. So my girlfriends in California that are still out there, I communicate with them daily, and they constantly talk about the blue bubble, right? And that's like they live in this blue bubble, and so it's for them it's really hard to kind of see outside of that. But where I was at, I'll tell you, like my experience is me on the ground. I don't watch a lot of news. I don't watch a lot of these things.
But you do your research though, so I know you.
I do my research. Yes.
I know you do your research and you do it thoroughly. So that's just why I kind of asked that question.
Well, so I worked for a library system for 5 years.
Yeah.
Library system here in Orlando, Florida, for 5 years, and so I come from this kind of like look it up, find a good source. Make sure that
it's a credible source.
Yeah, find a reliable source, and obviously you have to know when things are biased, right? You have to know when things are being advertised to you, which a lot of like the baby boomer generation doesn't even notice when things are
They don't, and they play on their emotion. I noticed that they play on their emotion so like strongly.
Definitely. So, I mean, coming from that kind of marketing background, but then working for,
so you understand that I'm being marketed.
So yeah, it's like I'm in marketing. So, I mean, I totally get like wanting to sway people to your direction. And so I think maybe I'm a little bit more aware of that than most people. But at the same time, I mean, that's definitely, it's definitely a little scary that most people just get their news from one source, something that leans so one direction, on both sides, like, say Fox News, I mean, CNN, I mean, you see it. I mean, you can flip back and forth.
But some people don't believe it still,
right?
Nowadays.
Oh, totally. Crazy. I mean, yeah, and you even see like right now we're seeing a lot of people on the Republican side leaving Facebook for a more extreme platform because they don't like seeing the liberal stuff from Facebook. So, I mean,
it's also, but it's also like I've heard a lot of that it's because of these internet companies like Facebook and Twitter are starting to stop or like monitor what they're saying, and it feels more like but it feels more like censorship than it is a.
That's true though. Like
I totally get that. I get that. But at the same time, I mean, these platforms have been used, especially in the 2016 election, to spread false information. Yeah. Like we just said, the baby boomers really can't tell that apart, and probably most of them can't tell that apart.
I mean, to be honest, the people in general are lazy. Let's just be honest with that.
It's true.
I mean, it does happen. It's definitely true.
But I've seen Facebook doing it. I feel like they did a good job of like every time someone puts something up that's political, I've seen now at the bottom underneath it's like this is not true, or like so they do some sort of fact checking.
Or they say that go read up your information for yourself, something like that. Like this is potentially not a true information. Blah blah blah. It gives you a warning and then goes to DYOR.
Which I think is good. But then there's other stuff where they're like, all right, we're just gonna
Oh, they're
delete
just
this stuff.
blocking
They're
it.
just blocking it
They're just
in general,
blocking it.
and that doesn't seem like the right move. to be
Yeah.
Yeah,
making.
I mean, I've definitely flagged statements for not, on my end, reporting statements for things that aren't true, things like that.
Yeah.
Because it's not, when people put things out there as facts and not opinions, if it's an opinion, that's one thing.
So
But
opinions are facts, right?
opinions are not facts. That's not how
I
this
know,
works.
I know. It's just funny though, because I like how people think their opinion is are facts sometimes.
Right.
Whoa,
All right.
all right. My opinions are my facts. Okay, that's what I'm doing. That's what I'm going with.
You can speak your truth all you want.
It's my
Telling
truth.
it to 500,000 people.
Get out of your bubble, okay, Robert? Get out of your bubble.
It's my Robert bubble. Like that's all I get.
Yeah. So yeah.
Yeah. No, so I was just saying in general, like and I'm glad you see that, because the reason why I was asking that, because a lot of people who are very involved in the party system, things like that, they don't go take a step back sometimes and actually realize I'm being marketed to, or because listen, at the end of the day, it's okay to align to a party because it aligns to your values, but also at the same time though, just be cognizant of what you're putting yourself into, and making sure that you're understanding actually everything that you actually like.
You don't want to have blind loyalty to anything.
Correct.
But
I feel like
I always tell people.
But I feel like that's both sides of the party, right? Like for example, like, were you always a Biden fan, or do you support Bernie Sanders before this? I'm just wondering. I'm just curious.
So Joe Biden was definitely not my first choice as a voter.
I'm curious, on the primary, who you were going for?
I was a really big fan of Elizabeth Warren, and she's not perfect either, right? Nobody is, but I really loved that she had ideas and a plan and wanted to support the grassroots efforts. I mean, she did so much to even help local candidates. She had a website template for local candidates that were running.
She's very thorough in detail. I'll give you that for sure.
Yes, no.
She's very hardcore to that nail of the fact.
Exactly. And I think, I mean, definitely, I sent some little quizzes out to my friends, like, who do you most align with in the Democratic And of course I took it too. And I was like, oh, Elizabeth Warren's like my go figure.
It just happened, right?
But there's still things that I didn't agree with for her. But for me, she was the one who I, identified with and felt most passionate about.
Gotcha.
But reading why she didn't win, it definitely makes sense, and I don't think a lot of us expected her to win. But it was just
to be honest, for me it was Tulsi Gabbard. To be honest,
really,
yeah. I feel like
you're in the minority there, Michael.
I know I am. I am.
Tulsi Gabbard.
I am. And the reason why for me was like, because she came, like, she would have probably stole a lot of the GOP side votes and stuff, because just her conservative, by the way, quote unquote, background for a Democrat. But I just felt like she's a new blood, and she's done well in her.
People felt that way about Trump. He was the outsider, right?
Yeah, but I'm totally totally on that bus.
Well, Garber had some political background, and she was in the army, and so she's like, she had the military background knowledge-ish. Like, I felt like she would know how to select the right people for cabinets in a sense, and she was young, and I feel like it was kind of long overdue for a young, I guess, like, I don't know. I feel like,
yeah,
and just in general, right? It's just like, I mean, and then when I found out, like, she didn't even make it past top 5, top 6, something like that. Like, and I was like,
So, really, that's kind of interesting that you thought that she was kind of your favorite, because I'll tell you that most Democrats, she was not even on.
I know that, and because
I know Democrats that are just like no, like a hard no on her. Like that was. And for me, it was I was Yang Gang forever.
Yang Gang, yeah.
I love that.
Yeah, Yang stole a lot of people from Bernie Sanders for sure. Like,
I think Yang was. I love that he kind of came in with a different perspective.
Yeah,
right?
exactly. And I was on board with like
the whole universal income.
I'm on board with not having politicians as like our people. Like, I hate the whole political system, and just having an outsider come in, and he came in and talked about things like technology and things that were like the future, right?
That makes
sense. He just started fresh. Like, I feel like
this is what you need to look at.
This is what it needs to look at. Right?
I actually like his approach to education. His approach to education was really on the nail, because you have to evolve your people to the next level. Because this one, we're going to get smarter, we're going to be more efficient, right? And those jobs are not going to be there regardless. I mean, so might as well evolve your people too. So elevate everyone up at the same time by fixing the education. I think for me that, and the reason why I didn't really, I guess, again went all the way with him as it's just because of the lack of political and network experience that he had with like Garber had. So
Yeah.
I mean, otherwise, I mean, he to be honest, though, he actually his talk and his universal income came in the right time, right place. To be honest,
That's true. Like as soon as
COVID
like
hit?
he was off, we had like this pandemic, and then they're like,
Yeah.
oh, we could use $1,000 a month now.
Yeah, I mean, there were even Republicans kind of,
Supported
you know,
him.
working
Yeah.
towards that. It was very bizarre, like to see him being so like just ahead of his time, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that was very apparent, you know, once
Yeah.
pandemic stages here.
So you said that you support Elizabeth. So once Elizabeth, I guess, didn't come through, who was your next candidate?
So basically, by the time we got to vote here in Florida, it was pretty apparent that Joe Biden was going to be the nominee.
I feel like for me, Joe Biden like kind of sneakily got up there, like secretly.
Well,
like, he was very quiet for a while.
It was very interesting because with the Iowa caucuses, I don't know how much you guys watched of that.
I followed very closely in that. Yeah.
So I really didn't follow Iowa caucuses before this year, past year. But this year when I was watching it, it was very interesting because Joe Biden almost basically got booted out of that.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And part of it was, if you look at what happened, part of it was that his team actually held a rally instead of going out and working the caucuses and trying to get their people to vote and trying to do this. And so it was kind of like, wait, you're having a big almost celebration party when you should be working being elected. So to me, that felt very pompous, cocky, out of touch from a Democrat's perspective.
Yeah.
So I think they then learned their lesson though and went in and worked hard in the other areas.
I think that's why they kicked up the next gear. That's what I realized. And you're right. This is why I said that I felt like it was quiet, and then suddenly just next gear happened.
Yeah, yeah.
I thought Bernie Sanders was gonna win the candidacy. Like
really?
That's what I thought. I like it wasn't my like the
Wait,
guy.
why did you
I
say
want.
that? Why do you?
He just had such a strong
momentum,
and like it feels like a very grassroots type of like.
Oh, it totally is. It's totally grassroots.
But yeah, and I was like, I was surprised how he just started losing ground, and I didn't understand like why it was so much noise for Bernie Sanders, and yet it didn't come out.
Yeah, well, and we kind of have seen this in the past, and I'll tell you, even at the local level, this is pretty common, is that those farther left progressives it's a lot of talk and very little action. I mean, basically, they didn't get out the vote that they needed to, and so that's a pretty common tendency. I mean, I've even seen it here trying to organize local progressives. I dated a guy for a while who organize the progressives here and the far left progressives and Democratic Socialists, et cetera, and they basically he would put together events, he would put together things, and no one would show up. And now
it's tough though. It's tough to get people out there unless you have something to lose for.
Well, and also a lot of the people who we were trying to get, he was trying to get organized, were people that were working 2 and 3 jobs, who had this.
That's true. They're not the spare time to do that, I guess.
Right, like what you can't go out and work 10 hours each weekend if you're working 40 hours each. So it's like it's definitely.
I guess what's the real expectation behind that, right? In a sense. Especially that you work 2-3 jobs, it's kind of tough to get that.
Yeah, I mean, and people that people that were disabled and people, I mean, it's very difficult to kind of have this activism. I definitely recognize, like, I am the political elite, right? Like, I have the time, the energy, the money to do this in my spare time. I don't have to work a second and third job. I don't have to worry about if my boss is going to fire me for even doing this, which in Florida they can fire you for whatever. You can
actually, to be honest though, I know people who got fired for having a political view, and it's sad to say that. Whether you're blue or red doesn't matter. Like it's just crazy.
Yeah, actually, my last position where I got laid off in February, they had an official statement that said you were not allowed to share your political opinions online. Now, granted, after the 2016 election, that was like no one followed that, right? Like, I'll just tell you, like,
wait, so
how did they
how did they track that?
They didn't.
Oh, okay.
But they had situations in the past where attorneys had basically gotten involved, and they they had fired people because they were super extreme.
Is it because they lost clients because of that? I'm just wondering what happened.
Yes, yeah, it was because they had lost clients. So I did work for a home builder. So actually a developer, which is kind of funny because that's not usually the Democrat side of things. But working for a developer in the state of California is way different than working for a developer in Florida. I'll tell you that much. Just with EPA regulations, I mean, with everything.
Of course, yeah. Every state has its own different set of laws too, also to public relations.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, in Florida, you know, a lot of times they just allow you to kind of bulldoze the wetlands, or, you know, we have something here. So
it's very loose. You realize it's very loose.
Yeah, let me do what I want with my land. Yeah,
pretty much. And that's kind of one thing that actually comes up here. So I'm in Seminole County, Florida, which is just northeast of the Orlando area. It's actually where about half of the University of Central Florida's housing, off-campus housing is. Yeah. And so we have been a traditionally red county for decades, for decades and decades and decades. I mean, some like kind of famous things we're known for is, you know, is both kind of Klan rallies by Lake Jessup, which is a big lake here, and then also the Trayvon Martin shooting is another thing that my county is known for.
Yeah.
And so it was very much red and very much rural. The county actually split off. They were originally part of Orange County, but they actually split off because they wanted to live a more rural lifestyle. And so that was why the two counties split, and you got Orange and then Seminole. But in Seminole County, we actually had voted red. The last time we voted for a Democratic president was 1948 with Harry Truman.
That's crazy.
Wow.
And this year, we actually flipped the county from red to blue.
Nice.
So we voted for Joe Biden as president. There's clearly a lot of factors there, but we had been part.
Do you think more people just decided to show up and vote, or they just got more knowledge out of that? Just wondering.
Yeah, so we definitely saw record numbers. We saw record numbers of people coming out. I mean, when you look at things like Marjorie Stoneman Douglas, the shooting there that happened on Valentine's Day a couple years ago. Yeah. More kids, more high school kids, college kids are getting involved. They're getting invested, and they're realizing that what we have going on here now is not okay. And so we're seeing a lot of kids that are even, coming from very conservative, very, very far, conservative Christian families even, that are coming out and want to be Democrats and want to help support the Democratic Party. And so it's very interesting. But also, I mean, we have shifting demographics here. I'll say that. Like, the cost of housing in Orlando is expensive. So and that's actually one of the reasons I ended up in Seminole County. I grew up on the Orange County side of the line, about a mile the line, and now I live a mile into Seminole County. I've decided to buy my house here because the cost of living, the quality of life is good.
So I heard, I mean, in certain states and certain counties, they've done a lot of gerrymandering in order to kind of control the area. It's crazy.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like, how do they get away with that? Especially like in Pennsylvania, or Pennsylvania, where else? Michigan did that a few times. Like, and it's kind of
it happens nonstop, and it happens on both sides of the line. It happens.
Correct. It happens both sides
with Republicans. That's something to just be aware of. It's not just one side or the other, which is wrong. Yeah. It's wrong. The people should have a voice, right?
Yeah.
And so in the state of Florida, we actually had the League of Women Voters sued the state of Florida because of their maps, their congressional.
Really?
Yes. And they won. They beat the state of Florida in a lawsuit. And that was actually how our districts got redistricted. And that's how Stephanie Murphy, who is our Democratic Congresswoman from my district, she represents all of Seminole County and a little bit of Orange County. Her district got redistricted. And that is one of the reasons that she actually got elected in 2016. And she beat out a 30+ year Republican incumbent, was because the gerrymandering was fixed. And so she was actually able to beat out the Republican incumbent. And, but there was a long road to that. I mean, the League of Women Voters, like I said, had to sue the state of Florida. And basically the judge that ruled on this told the legislature, okay, you have basically 3 chances to, I'm kind of
fixed.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm kind of condensing it here. But basically, the judge told the legislature, which is predominantly Republican in the state of Florida, they told them, okay, you basically have 3 chances to fix this map.
Yep.
So they went back to the drawing board. They drew something. It was completely gerrymandered. The judge said, no, that doesn't work. But then they did it again. And the judge is like, no, this still doesn't work. And so basically they went back to the drawing board. I believe that time they didn't end up providing a map in time. And so finally the judge just said,
I'll draw it for you.
original map that the League of Women Voters submitted that is not gerrymandered.
Oh, that's crazy.
So that is what ended up happening. But now with the census, happening this year, everything is going to be redrawn.
Yeah,
wait, is that how those lines are drawn?
Yeah.
Is based off a census?
Yes, that's just why it's very important to do the census thing.
So the legislature will approve it, and again, in Florida, we have a Republican legislature. So
do you have like a reason why these lines are drawn versus just like, oh, we're just gonna draw these squares around everyone and just let it go?
I think it would make sense at this point in time to have some sort of computer program that would just automatically divide up the land. But part of it is because of, part of it is just because of the history that's not how it was done, right? No one trusts a computer program to do it. No one trusts
the old school way. That's what
I don't even understand why they don't just like draw like squares out, like just square it up and just that's what it is. Why do we have all these like random lines all around these areas?
Population density.
Yeah, so it's based on density. It's based on population density. So for example, in Miami, right, it's incredibly dense. Whereas where I live, it is really not that dense. So you have to make sure that each person is represented and that they're represented.
It's like square footage per population.
But we already have these random lines called states that we have. So like, who the hell cares? Like it feels like our system isn't made for this anyways, to be like, so why?
It does matter though, because it comes down to counting money now. Counting money. It's all comes down. It comes down to
a lot of it comes down to money. A lot of it comes down to, power is essentially what it is. And it's that, people want to control their power. And so, for example, a Republican legislature is not going to redraw the lines for some of their top, state senators, for some of their top, some of their top, congressional districts. They're not going to redraw those lines and then let those people get kicked out of office based on numbers.
And it's vice versa too. This happens both ways, right?
Yeah, like I said, But in Florida, it is obviously the Republican. Republicans have been in charge here for over 20 years. And the Democratic Party, like we can go into that, but the Democratic Party here in the state of Florida is a mess. And so Republicans...
It's grown, but I feel like it has grown a lot though. The Democratic Party in Florida has grown a lot. And yes, there's obviously there's still things to be, could be better, right?
Yeah.
So let me ask you this though, I guess, obviously you're very aligned to the Democratic Party, right?
Yes.
If you can name 3 things that the Democratic Party could fix, what would that be?
I mean, one of the big things that we saw come out of this election was clearly Hispanic outreach. And that was something that we were severely lacking.
Hang on. Why do you say that? I'm just wondering.
Because when you look at the maps, and I'll drop it in our thing here. But when you look at the maps, you can see that the number of the change in the Republican and Democrat votes from 2016 to 2020, Republicans seriously gained in South Florida. So that was something that
you think it's because the Cubans, I guess, the Venezuelans, all the people that live there.
Oh yeah, totally. I mean, the Hispanic outreach.
What do you think that is?
Trump's team really pushed hard the agenda that Biden is a socialist, a communist, and the Democrats did nothing to really rebuke that. And so we saw that this issue, and it really just. It really hurt. It really hurt us here in Florida because the Democrat, our Democratic strongholds are usually South Florida. And so even though those counties still went blue, they didn't go blue by enough of a margin to flip the state of Florida.
Gotcha. And I also, because I think you're right, because at the end of the day, the people that I talked to that are Hispanic, they supported Trump. It's not because they liked them. It's just because I was talking to a Cuban guy, a friend of mine here in Orlando, right? He voted Trump. He said that because he came from communist area, he knows that what's going to happen next. Because at the end of the day, there is certain things that he personally sees that there are steps forward where he's already, okay, wow, that's what they call it, socialist first, and you'll see what happens when I'm like, well, it doesn't really work like that. In United States, the government's a little bit different, right? Even though you have like a socialist program, it doesn't necessarily mean, hey, this is going to be, it's going to be a socialist country in a sense, and that's what they're afraid of, right? But then you have Trump on the other side, where he's like, well, you rather have a dictator, because the way he's talking about it, he'd rather be a dictator, especially if he's trying to control the terms and eventually one day, right? So it's like what happened in Chavez and Venezuela. Like, so we were talking about that little piece. He's kind of sees it, but he's like, well, what can we do? We're stuck with these two-party system.
Yeah.
And
right. Well, and I thought it was, I think a lot of it honestly was messaging, though, because
it's all messaging play.
Those of us in the Democratic Party, we see that Biden is so moderate and Harris is so moderate. But when you especially compared to someone like Yang or Bernie Sanders or, those kind of, or Elizabeth Warren, Biden is such a moderate. And so for us, it doesn't even.
But an average person don't see that, though.
The average person doesn't see that. The average person is just not really that aware. I mean, you ask the average person, they don't even know who Mike Pence is. So, I mean, a lot of it for me, again, goes back to that, like, public education, right? Like, we're not doing justice to our citizens. Like, and a lot of it is just because people are just not aware. People are too busy working that second and third job and struggling to make ends meet and feed their families to really worry about this, to dive in, to engage. I mean, even with internet and us all having smartphones, I mean, they just don't have the time, energy, or money to focus on this.
So let me ask you this then. In order to get the Hispanic voters outreach better, what kind of policies do you guys, Democrats, should focus on to get their attention on? Because it looks like one of the things that they really focused on was like, hey, you know what, we want to make sure that, we, at least from the Republican side of things, they wanted to make sure, hey, we're not going to try to implement social programs, things like that can hurt the system in a sense. And they kind of played the fear of communists coming their way.
Oh, totally. Yeah. Fear works, right? Like it does. It does. Yeah. And it's horrible that that's kind of what it comes down to. But I mean, a lot of it is, maybe Democrats should have done more messaging about kind of the dictatorship aspect of it, right? Or maybe, I mean, honestly, I'm a big proponent of focusing on policies that will literally make a difference in people's lives. And so, I mean, I think healthcare is one issue where, I would say two big issues that are not super popular with our Hispanic, especially like our Cuban population in Venezuela.
Well, actually, taxes is a very big topic on them.
Taxes, right? Yeah, huge definitely. Yeah. And so, I mean, that was another piece that kind of went into play was that, if your taxes aren't going to be made that much worse by Biden's plan or worse at all if you're not making, $400,000 a year over, however much a year. So I think there needed to be a lot more clarity on that versus just that he wanted, because I think Trump's messaging worked, right? And it was good. And it was basically like, I hate to say that it was good, but it was good. Was that, it was these scare tactics of, we're going to raise your taxes. Everybody, was going to, I mean, I heard it nonstop. I mean, I heard those Trump ads on the radio, on TV, and I don't even have cable, and I heard those Trump ads nonstop. And it was that Biden said, I'm going to raise your taxes, and they would play the clip, and Biden would say, if you're like me, your taxes are going to be raised. But obviously, people don't understand that, right? They don't get that Biden's saying that because he is in the upper, 1%. He's not your average Joe, ironically, but he's there, and he is that political elite. He is the one who we should be taxing. So I think that's a big piece of it. But as far as messaging to our Hispanic communities, I mean, I think a lot of it should be about kind of equality. A lot of it should be discussing like maybe legal immigration reform, that kind of thing. Although I know, several of my friends here, their parents that were Trump supporters, my Hispanic friends here in Central Florida, my friends' parents were Trump supporters. And so, and part of it is kind of this, I got mine mentality. It's like, I'm here, I came here legally, I did all these things. So now I'm going to go through, and vote against.
I feel like it's a little bit tough on that situation. I think that topic. So so you're saying that you think that the Democrat did a poor job on that messaging piece, or do you
totally.
Or do you think they did a poor job on not addressing the policy more?
I think it's both. I think messaging is really a big piece of it. So I think if the messaging was done a little better, if it was stronger.
Because it's kind of hard. You think about this, right? So like, obviously during the Obama administration, Obama deported more illegal immigrants than Trump
Right.
has.
Yeah.
And but people don't understand that, right? Like,
Right.
and at the same time, though, it's kind of like, okay, you know what? And if they want, if they want a true border in a sense, right? You do want everybody to try to go through the system, but also at the same time, you gotta understand that there are certain circumstances people cannot go through that system because their country are whatever, invaded, things like that. Stuff happen, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And so, and people don't realize that once that other scenario, and I think that get advertised to one side of things. So like,
yeah.
like,
I
and
feel
it's-
like on the Democrat side, there's also a lot of, well, from what I've heard, right? Like I don't watch TV too much. I see a lot of stuff on my social media and different things. But I feel like the Democrat side was always pushing towards how racist Trump was versus the Trump side was always saying how socialist the Democrat side was.
yeah.
And as a if you're an immigrant looking at this, you're like, is he really racist versus I've seen socialism and I've seen how bad that is.
Yep.
I'd rather
Yeah.
be like with someone who's like
to you, right? It goes
slightly racist versus someone who's gonna like kill my country, right? It's
Right.
Actually talking
And I mean, I think the Democratic Party also kind of underestimates the racism that exists in this country, not just white people. I mean, racism is not a check yes or no box. I mean, it is definitely a gray scale, and at some point we all fall onto that scale, right?
And it's not going to go away tomorrow either, though. You know what I mean?
I think a lot more people could kind of identify with or be okay with kind of blatant racism. They're used to it, right? Like I feel like especially those of us here in Florida. I mean, if you haven't personally seen something racist happen and you grew up in the state of Florida, like
you haven't got out of your house yet.
yeah, exactly. Yeah. Like you're living under a rock, right?
Yeah. For sure.
So, I mean, it's just very, very blatant. I mean,
talking to a Cuban, the same Cuban voter friend that he supported Trump, he's like, yeah, I got out of Cuba. I self-made myself here in Florida. At the end of the day, he's just like, I mean, he was definitely misinformed in the tax because I kind of told him about that. I'm like, hey, are you making $400K a year? I'm like, like things like that. But he also said the reason why he chose Trump is because he didn't really like. I'd rather take that little piece of it based on his action he did in terms of the tax situation, based on how he expanded Obamacare. And he talked about how he kind of like pursued like how at least Trump tried to do something with pharmaceutical, where the Democrat Party has not done anything for during the last 4 years when he was in. But it's kind of like like it's the way he was just spinning out. I'm like, okay, I can see why he's kind of aligned to that. And tackling that whole healthcare issue in a sense, and I kind of broke it down for him. I said, hey, why do you think that do you believe actually healthcare for all in the first place? And he says, like, to be honest though, nothing should be for free, the way he mentioned that, because if it's free, people would take advantage, would not value it, right? For example, food should not be free, but it should be a little bit, but it should not be expensive, because at the end of the day, it's a necessity. So it's like, think about from a human need first versus actual, like, human needs first, and then you come down to what is what is the next level, right? What is human need first? You need food to survive. You need to have good health, right? But he said that in order to value that, you got to put a little bit of price on the value. Like, for example, make them work a community garden, right, to grow their food, so that to have free, quote unquote, free food, or add some value to the system where, like, for example, Obamacare could have been improved on even a lot more if they opened up to the market, but they didn't open up to the market. I feel like, and that's the reason why healthcare it's one of the reasons why.
I mean, I think we can all agree that the ACA, Obamacare, is not.
No, it was the first. It was the very first time doing something like that, and nothing is perfect. Nothing, right?
Yeah. So I did, I did actually this election cycle. One of the things that I did was I met with the Japanese Consulate General for the state of Florida. And he came to Central Florida, and he interviewed kind of all the kind of elected officials, all of the people who were in kind of my role, for all of the different parties, honestly, is what he did. And so he kind of walked me through it, and he was really kind of surprised. He said, I thought this pandemic would have pushed people more towards more
healthcare,
wanting, healthcare that works, right?
Yeah.
And he said, but really, there seems to have been a big backlash and almost.
It's actually, I feel like it became more divisive.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
When you look at it, what? Sorry.
Before you move on, what do you think? What do you think that is?
I mean, I definitely think that this was on purpose. I think that the president and his team have divided this country on purpose. They don't want it to be joint and together. I mean, I think that's really what it is. Is
it more like divide and conquer fear type of deal?
Yeah, definitely. I think divide and conquer and use those fear tactics to gain more power and, to kind of put more control in Republican hands. I mean, we see it not just with Trump, but with Mitch McConnell. I mean, we see it ongoing within the Republican Party. And so it does feel very purposefully divisive, in my opinion.
But doesn't this also make the Democrat more united as well, though?
Yeah, I would say that the most united we've been here,
in a while, right? In a while.
The Democratic Party, right, locally, is that, we came together because of Trump, right? Like, it was a reaction. And I can talk a little bit more about kind of my background and how I got involved with this. But basically, it was this, oh my God, how did we let this man become president, right? Like, he has the nuclear codes, right? Like how do we let this man who, can't spell the word coffee on Twitter, to have the nuclear codes, right? And so, so for me, like, I woke up, I'll tell you my story, because I think that's definitely like, that definitely plays into kind of how a lot of people got involved. Was I woke up the morning after the 2016 election. I mean, I was in California, so I was staying up late watching it. There's a 3-hour time difference. So I was able to kind of see these results roll in, and it was looking like Trump was winning all of these states. And it was scary. I mean, it was scary. It was relatively unexpected for someone who wasn't involved in politics at the time. And so for me, we just kept watching and waiting. I mean, I had a bottle of champagne in my fridge for Hillary, female president. Like, I was ready to go. And we just sat there and we were like, this can't be happening. Like, this just can't be happening. But again, I was living in that San Francisco blue bubble at the time.
Do you think the Democrats underestimated the unlikability of
Trump?
Of Hillary? Because that's really the reason why a lot of people didn't vote for her, was because she just didn't
Bernie
seem
Sanders
like
fans,
a real person.
Yeah,
like, she seemed
for her.
I mean, I'll tell you, as a woman in politics, period. I mean, you're seen as unlikable. It's like, we'll start out like, do I think Hillary was an ideal candidate? No, but do I think that she was probably the most qualified person at that point
in paper?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, but also qualified means you're in the political sphere, and that was what everyone was trying to go up against, right? So that was like a negative on her. Plus, she seemed like everything was very scripted, and that everything was just like
I mean, when I saw certain things come out of her campaign, like when she went and rode the New York City subway and stuff like that, like it looked ridiculous. Like it was ridiculous. This is not who she was. It was clearly not authentic, which I'm a big proponent of, especially with our local candidates. I tell them, I'm like, whatever you do, be authentic with it. Like, just do it. And so it really felt like she had been kind of pushed into this mold of what like makes a good politician. And I mean, if you look back at some of the history of kind of who she was and how this went about, I mean, she didn't even change her last name when she was first married to Bill Clinton. But she got so much hate for that. We pressured her when Bill Clinton was elected as president. We as Americans basically pressured her to put forth her like cookie recipe, right? High power attorney. She doesn't have her own little personal cookie recipe. Like, and that's like the type of things that we were pressuring, first ladies to do, pressuring women who were in politics to do. And so we really molded her in. She was kind of this feminist outlier when she first got into the game, when she was first working, and when she first married Bill Clinton. And so then, as that time went on, in order to be seen as a qualified candidate, she had to let a lot of that go and just go with the flow. Now, I also think that polling and consultants are a lot to blame. I'll say that. Like, clearly like they were following polling, and that's how they determined where their dollars were spent in which state.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
Incredibly
Yeah.
off.
Yeah.
I've heard that this year is like the death of polling, basically, because
Well,
and
they got smarter, right? I think 2016 election, they realized, you know what, the Trump campaign was smart with the dollar money and was smart on how to be creative, how to get reach better voters. And I felt like this year, the Democrat, okay, you know, we're gonna do a similar thing. We're gonna have to think outside the box. I feel like TikTok itself has gotten a lot of blue votes. Let me tell you, because of the younger generation.
Yeah.
And I seen that a lot. Like, and I mean, I remember in June, I was like already seeing all these blue campaigns. So I'm like, holy crap! I never seen so many people being involved in this already. And it's not like I was liking those posts. I'm like, they're just feeding you, you know. And
yeah, I mean, it was prevalent, especially on TikTok, right? It was that generation, you know, diving in and taking part and being active.
So anyway, Brittany, go back to the minister though. Let's go finish the story of that part.
So the story, so basically I sat there on election night in 2016 and was like, oh my God, what is happening, right? And I went to bed and woke up the next morning and Donald Trump was president. Yeah. And it was scary as hell for me. I woke up, and mind you, I did not open that bottle of champagne. I did not drink heavily because I was waiting. I woke up the next morning and I had a headache, and I had a headache for 8 days straight.
So wait, hang on. Why was it scary for you? Because what did you know about Trump at that time?
I knew that he was an unreliable real estate mogul from New York, right? That he was born into this wealth, that he had created Trump University and defrauded so many people in the state of Florida. Yeah. I mean, I knew that I'd watched all the debates at that point. I'd watched the Republican debates. I'd watched, the debates with Hillary. And I thought, how can he represent us? How can he be seen as what America is? And for me, it was kind of shocking. There's a very funny Dave Chappelle skit from Saturday Night Live that really represented what was happening in my living room that night, because I was there with some friends, right? All hanging out, and we're like, oh my God, how is this happening? This is like the worst. Like, it was just really funny because the Dave Chappelle skit, if you haven't seen it, definitely watch it, from election night 2016, was like, oh my God, how is this happening? And then literally your friend, who is, like, it's Dave Chappelle, so it's the black friend, right? He's sitting there and he's like, oh yeah, I'm so surprised that America is racist and sexist. And it was, that's literally like what happened in my living room. Like, so many of those phrases were said. Like, my one friend was going, there's still Alaska, all of those phrases that happened in that SNL skit happened in my living room. So it was just, it was like, you had to laugh or you would cry. Yeah. It was just like this.
It was like a sad, funny moment.
Oh, totally. I mean, we were all basically like bawling, laughing, right? Like, we were crying our eyes out. But I mean, it's like, it's just that America would choose someone who, he openly talked about, pussy grabbing, right? Like that kind of thing, like about sexually assaulting women. Like, this is something that he was bragging about. And so for the United States to elect someone, obviously not by the popular vote, of course, Democrats, but not by the popular vote, but for us to elect someone, period, who has these values, kind of essentially, I kind of take it as, the reason that he was elected was essentially because of one issue voters, because of people who wanted to see a conservative Supreme Court. For, a lot of my friends and family who are religious, very openly voted for him. And it's because abortion is their only issue. And so for me,
see, that goes back to the value, right? So
yeah.
And I feel like that's a big issue in general, because how they were raised. If you grew up Catholic, if you grew up Christian, whatever it is, I think that matters though, believe it or not.
Well, no, I totally believe it. And we saw that here with our local candidates too. I mean, we had two candidates that they slammed nonstop locally, that the Republicans slammed, and their ads were almost identical. It said, how can you vote for Pasha Baker? Pasha Baker believes in abortion up to the moment of delivery. And it's like, come on, like, who believes this without like literally looking up information?
So think about this, right? The people who supported Trump in 2016, though, but you also realize, okay, wow, there's actually people listening to him. That means it resonates to
Yeah.
some certain crowd. But it also woke up part of America where, okay, you know what? There's someone actually representing me, truly. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And usually it's probably the people from rural area with poor education,
Yep.
and they probably get information one way, and they're
Yeah.
not gonna. And I feel like also at the same time though, like whether you're blue or red, like the rural area, you have poor education, you're gonna get information one way. Whether you get fed through the blue information, whatever it is, that little bubble, and it's like.
Yeah.
And it's sad to see that, but that's how it resonates, right? So you don't know what's right or wrong to a certain degree. You're like, okay, you know what? At least he's connecting me the message, and he's talking to me that message, kind of message. Whatever he did in the past, most people forgive him about that. If you notice that, most people forgive him for a lot of things he did in the past.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, and a lot of people.
And everything he said, just like flies off it. Like nothing ever sticks.
They just ignore it. They just
like,
ignore
whatever.
it in a sense. Like even the Twitter piece,
It's
right?
it's blind loyalty is what it is. I mean, it's definitely blind loyalty.
But is it to the party or to him, do you think, though?
I feel like it's honestly to him. Because we see things. So I'll tell you, here locally in Central Florida, there was a house that I would pass regularly that would fly. They actually had their Trump flag above their American flag.
Right.
And this is not that much of an uncommon occurrence here, unfortunately. But it's like they're not putting their country first. They're putting Trump, putting this person above the United States, which is really scary to me. I mean, it definitely comes off as incredibly cultish, dictatorish.
Do you think it's because I guess he had the balls to call out the media, even though we knew the media was biased for a while, but no one had the balls to call it out, right? No one had the balls to actually push that issue. And not only that, the pharmaceutical piece of it too, and the trade stuff, right? And I feel like at least, okay, quote unquote, he's not the perfect guy. And I'm not saying that, whatever he did was correct or not, but at least he had the balls to call those things out, and he had no ties to that, right? And I feel like,
and he's also not a politician, so like everything he says
I think that was the bigger piece of it.
doesn't seem calculated. It seems more authentic, and that's really the thing. Like authenticity is very important.
That's his marketing. Brittany, that's his marketing.
Yeah. Oh, totally. I get it. I mean, that's, he is who he is, right? Like that is very clear. And, I would like to see Democrats be more authentic in the future.
How's that though? How will you even address that? Like, I feel like they play by the books so.
Yeah.
It's a party, right? Like those two.
I do feel like, for example, President Obama came off as more authentic. Like,
true. I agree.
And I mean, it was genuine. It was from the heart. I mean, I just saw him a couple of weeks ago. He came here to Orlando, and I was standing 20 feet away from him at a socially distanced event. And I mean, my mom was standing next to me bawling because she was like, "This is amazing." He's just like, he speaks the truth, right? Like that's like when you hear him speak, you can't feel anything but like, oh my God, this is amazing. Like, and it's really difficult to kind of feel any other way when you're listening to him. He's just a powerful speaker.
Well, I mean, you saw this also too when Kaylee came in as her secretary, right? And as soon as you can tell how good communicator she is versus Trump, everybody just listen to Kaylee instead of him. You know what I mean? And you saw the difference. Obviously, Trump's not a great speaker, the way he messages things, and it's just that. But the weird part about it is that the way he speaks still resonates with people. It's kind of
weird. Totally.
It's because it sounds like regular people.
He's speaking kind of in this blue collar dialect.
Yeah.
But it's which Democrats have had a hard time doing. I mean, to be frank, like it's we come off as these educated snobs who.
Yeah, it's true. That is that's the image.
Yeah, I mean, we are the elitist, right? Like that's how we come off. But ironically, when you look at who's at the top 1% of the top 1%, it's not those Democrats. It's not generally those Democrats.
Well, it's not that. I feel like it goes both parties, right? Like, and like this goes back to my question that do you think that the two-party system is working, to be honest, right? And I feel like I don't feel like the two-party system has any incentive to change because they both have. You know what? If you're not in power, I'm in power. Worst case scenario, I'm not in power. You're in power. At least there's no third party coming in. Like there's no incentive to change,
right?
And it's sad. Like for me, I feel, and one of my rant was earlier this episode. Like I was angry at this whole two-party system because I feel like I have higher standard for candidates. I'm not gonna vote for this kind of standard. I'm not gonna settle for lesser to two evil. And 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 it's a lot of us like that, to be honest.
Yeah, and I think there's a couple pieces to that, right? Like I think first, I think that the Electoral College is just not functional anymore, right? I
It needs
saw
to evolve. It needs to evolve for sure.
it needs to evolve. Yeah, it needs to change with the times, right? Like when our forefathers came up with this system, they didn't imagine how many millions of people lived in California, right? They didn't imagine that this would take place. They didn't imagine that we could easily, calculate the exact number of votes, right?
So what do you think it needs to evolve to? Just wondering.
So I would like to see a popular vote. I would like to see it switch to a popular vote, which
Why?
But that wouldn't
that wouldn't work either. Yeah.
So I would like to see it switch to a popular vote for a variety of reasons. So, but that doesn't really exactly have to do with the two-party system, but it kind of goes into this other piece that I'm going to mention here. But so I would like to see it change to a popular vote because I feel that each person's vote should be equal, right? Because right now, a lot of people, especially in those blue states or those red states, don't feel like their votes count. And so that definitely doesn't encourage people to speak their mind, to vote for the candidates they want, to do those things. So I think that's a big piece of it. The second piece that I think definitely needs to change is our actual voting system. So I do think that we need to change to some sort of voting system where, like ranked choice voting. Choice voting is kind of, there's a, yeah. Yeah, I mean they do that in a lot of places around around the world too. But it makes a little bit more sense.
But there's no incentive for them to do that because now the party doesn't exist. So
well, and there's no incentive for them to do that because right now the two parties that have control are the Republicans and the Democrats.
Yeah.
So they maintain their control by keeping things as is.
In order to change that, you had to amend in Congress, and you had in order to change that, you have to amend the Crux and get the judicial branch to pass that. That's the fact.
Oh, totally. I mean, it would be a lot of work. Like it's not something.
And it's also like voting against your own self-interest.
Yeah, exactly. And that's something that I don't think will happen for most of these people that are elected officials, right? So I think ultimately, I do think that would be better, but it's going to be a lot of work to get to that point. Starting with kind of smaller elections, changing how.
You mean like locally?
Locally, I think it's totally starting locally. I mean, I think it's changing, making things like, for example, my vice chair within the county Democratic Party suggested that we amend our bylaws so that we are doing ranked choice voting within our.
I feel like that's better because now you're not only voting for one person. You rank, at least you get to vote 3 people, and then you can reduce it. It's like the beauty pageant. That's what it is. That's how they do it.
Yeah, it's a little bit more, and there's different ways to do ranked choice.
Correct.
Yeah. Like that's the other thing is like on top of doing ranked choice voting, you'd also have to like figure out how you wanted to go about that. Yeah. There's a great,
but it's harder to. I mean, also it's hard just suddenly just to get rid of the electoral vote because what's going to happen with the smaller state, right? They want to have a say in it. Hey, this is not fair. You can have more people for this. You can have more saying in this. How are you?
Also, these large cities also have a information bubble as well. They're in their own bubbles. So then you're going towards these bigger cities and just talking to this crowd of people, like a mob mentality type of thing.
And so what you're saying is you could ignore as a you could just ignore the outskirts, or you could ignore the rural area.
Like why would you go to Montana or North Dakota?
And that's why you can't just get rid of the electoral vote piece. That's why.
Then those people feel like they don't have a vote as well. So it's like either way you do it, it seems like there's people that are feeling left out.
There's kind of a difference between being catered to, kind of having the politicians come to you and promote themselves, and not having an equal vote. And so
it doesn't make sense. Like if they're going to make some laws, they would make laws for New York and LA. They wouldn't make a law that helps Montana at all. They don't care.
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's definitely interesting, right? Is like you would need to make sure that, and I mean, so we still have things like Congress, right? So we still have things where, each state has 2 senators, right? So we still have representation.
And the Senate has to, I think the Senate too, that represents states.
And those senators would need to continue to push for their states. Frankly, I'm not sure, that the presidential, I'm not sure any president in recent history has really pushed for for things that were specific to swing states, right? And right now that's kind of how it is it's only swing states that can get attention from the presidential election.
Correct. Yeah.
And so it's definitely, I mean, I think no matter what you do, you're going to be kind of biased. But I think that right now, having, 2 senators per state, having congressional, all of that congressional representation.
It does balance a little bit, though, to be honest.
Yeah, I feel like it would, that piece balances it out, right? But I do think from a presidential perspective, I think we have to change to a popular vote. And we're already kind of on the way there, but they still need, I believe, 13 more states to sign on to the popular vote in order for it to be basically put forward for the national presidential election.
Yeah, and it's tough because it's kind of like, I mean, in terms of having a popular vote, I feel like it's a little tough because you're demeaning value of the smaller state in a sense to a certain degree.
Well, you say that, but I mean, it's usually the senators. It's usually the senators who are the ones for pushing for, senators in Congress who are pushing for those funds to come into their states, pushing for, support for their areas and their districts anyways. I mean, when was the last time a president, said, hey, I'm gonna fix, the tourism industry or, that kind of thing. Like, I mean, there's not swing states aren't getting anything out of this right now either, other than being harassed by presidential campaign. I mean, that's really it.
Well, I mean, we're not going to solve the voting system this talk,
Yeah.
but so, you know what I mean? So, but I mean, that's a good takeaway from your point of view, though, in a sense, though.
Yeah.
Now, so right now we're gonna, take a little break. We're gonna do the funny segment section.
Yeah, let's move on to something that let's take a breather from this conversation. That's it. That's really what it is.
Yeah. So, Robert, you want to start with yours?
Sure.
Story?
So I'm gonna send over this video to the group. I think Mike, you've seen this already from
Oh, I have.
on our group chat, but I just thought it was so funny that I had to show it.
Okay.
It's this guy. Let me zoom in on my screen.
This guy. Okay.
So he's showing.
After all this time, man, this girl just sat
Can't
here and
believe
told
she
me
said
that she does not love me no more.
I did not say that. I said you could not have a PS5.
It's the same thing.
No, it's not.
Yes, it is.
He said that his girl doesn't love him anymore, and she said, "I didn't say that. I said you couldn't have a PS5." He said, "That's the same thing."
That sounded like Sean to me.
Oh my god, that's such that I saw this and I cracked up. I was like, I feel like if I was in a relationship, I might feel the same way.
My boyfriend is already angling for a PS5, so that is
that's the angle. You gotta go for it. Oh man.
All right. So speaking of PS5, I'll go next. Okay.
Oh, you're also doing PS5 stuff?
Yes.
It's big in news right now. Like I couldn't get a PS5 from like anywhere.
Connie got one. Connie.
Yeah. Well, we have a few friends who got one, but I couldn't get one. It was too hard.
So I'm sharing this link. It's a picture, and it's pretty much the title says, "My lucky day. Some guy was selling a PS5 outside a grocery store for $50." And it's this giant looking fan thing that looks like a PS5, but it's like tall and lanky.
It really does look like a PS5.
It's like it literally looks like a PS5, but just really tall and really
It's really long.
And it's next to a PS4. It's just funny as hell.
I'm gonna look up what a PS5 looks like so people see the difference.
Yeah, that'll be hilarious. It was so good when I saw this. Like, I'm like, okay. Yeah, it's being sold out. Everybody, people are having a hard time getting a PS5, and no one's talking about the Xbox. By the way, the new Xbox that got released.
Nobody talks about the Xbox because that's not a big deal.
Yeah, so I mean, I don't game, but my boyfriend was like, "Oh, I want the new PS5," and so I was googling something to like see where I could get it, and it was like, "And here's where you can get the Xbox."
Sold out.
Like,
Oh yeah, Xbox everywhere. Like it's available. I've only seen memes of like the Xbox with like smoke coming out of it. Like some of them are like overheating and smoking up.
Oh really?
And they're like, "This is the worst humidifier ever, most expensive humidifier I've ever seen."
That's crazy.
But that's all I've seen on like stuff for Xbox. But PS5, like everybody wants one.
That's crazy. All right, Brittany, do you have a funny meme or story?
I don't know. I was trying to think of what to talk about. I mean, most of my stuff here. I'm gonna share this here.
Okay.
This is not it's gonna kind of go back to politics, but I think you guys
That's
will.
fine.
I think you
Yeah.
guys will appreciate it. There we go. Hold on a second. Shoot. Sorry. Give me a minute.
No problem.
I'm sorry. Okay, let me see here. I'm sorry. I'm looking for it. Like I know that there's, been lots of fun stuff, but I'll tell you my world recently has definitely circled around politics.
hmm We can see that. And I think everyone's life has been revolving around politics, especially with all of the crazy stuff that's going on.
You can't avoid politics nowadays. If you're avoiding politics, it means you're living under a rock right now, to be honest.
Well, and that's actually what like President Obama said that made my mom cry was that he was like when Jill Biden and Kamala Harris are elected, you won't have to wake up every morning and think about them. It was like, oh yeah, like your president doesn't have to be like front and center every single day, and it's like, oh yeah, I forgot about that. Like that's a thing that used to not happen, right?
We should get Joe Biden's a Twitter account on his toilet.
No, seriously, so make him tweet.
tweet on the toilet. That's what we need from Joe Biden right now. So
okay, so this is I just dropped it in the for you guys.
Alexa, show me the map of places in Florida that season. The
season their chicken.
Oh, okay.
That's great.
That's hilarious. So it's pretty much the state of Florida with the blue cities.
Yeah, it's literally just the counties that went blue, and so it's. I mean,
I also saw something that was like, "Oh, show me where I want to go on vacation," and it's just it's all the blue spots.
Yeah.
I've also seen one that says, Alexa, show me where all the major colleges are in Florida. So like,
and they're all blue. Yeah.
Lights up blue. Yeah. So that's kind of, and then I also had one. So I got to meet Dr. Jill Biden a couple of weeks ago in a very small group setting, which was really cool. And so one thing that I found really funny that I just like saw come across Facebook was this meme here, and I'm dropping it in right now. Sorry. But I thought this meme was really funny because for those of you that don't know, Dr. Jill Biden is a teacher, and my boyfriend is like, she was even teaching while Joe Biden was continuing to work as vice president, and et cetera, et cetera. So this is what I saw, and my boyfriend is a public school teacher. I grew up all the way going through public school, and so this is one thing that I saw that I thought was pretty funny.
The vote. I actually was gonna ask you about the votes. How do you feel about the votes?
So glad she's gonna get she's gonna be the first one.
The first one out.
Let me tell you, I actually dislike her very much too as well.
Yeah,
for sure. Yeah.
I mean, she's not the brightest crayon in the box, that's for sure. So when you get someone like Dr. Jill Biden, who is an educator, who's going to be in the White House, like friends around the world are rejoicing, right?
All right. So for those people who are not looking at this, it's pretty much a bear that says Dr. Joe Biden, and then there's a guy running away from the bears, and then that's the name of Betsy Devos. That's pretty hilarious.
Yeah. So it was definitely funny. I was excited because I'm like, that was something that really hurt, public education. I mean, she was pressuring hard for, private schools and charter schools. And so for us, Florida here is a big charter school state.
Well, charter school is kind of like public school according to people, you know what I mean?
Right. Yeah. And so, and they do a lot.
Charters involve like the baccalaureate programs, the AP programs, there's like STEM programs too that are in Florida. Or is that charter or is that something else?
So no, those are usually called magnet schools.
That's true. Yeah.
My boyfriend works actually at a magnet school. So those are actually, they have to be held to the same standards as public schools and whatnot. There are charter schools that focus on certain pieces of that.
Areas. Yeah.
Like there's a STEM charter school that I worked right by the when I worked for the library system, right down the street from this STEM's charter school. But a lot of times charter schools in Florida are just unregulated and kind of chaotic.
What they're supposed to be
private
regulated.
schools,
Private,
right?
no, well, they technically are public school, to be honest, by the bylaws.
Their funding comes from public school.
Yeah.
It comes out of our public school funds.
Yeah.
Reason,
But,
they
isn't it
call it
profit
school
though?
choice.
It's for profit, right? Isn't it?
They can be for profit. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a downside to that. It's because they could be for profit.
Yeah, that seems bad. It seems like a
Well,
bad
this is
idea.
why. This is why a lot of teachers go to charter school because they get paid more.
Yeah, sometimes
true.
teachers get paid more, or they have more flexibility because
Yeah.
they don't have to abide by, the exact rules or the exact everything. But a lot of times they don't even have to have the same certifications. I mean,
Correct. It can go both ways easily.
Yeah. Well, and a lot of, I mean, there are good charter schools out there. I mean, don't get me wrong, but what I don't want it taken out of public school funds. But a way have sold it to Florida communities, especially in minority areas, is that it is school choice is what they call it. But the reality is that in many of our schools, like where I live, if you can transport your child there, your child can go to a different school, right? In Seminole County, that's how it works. In magnet schools, if your child wants to go to a magnet school, you can usually go, right? There might be
there's a long waiting list for that kind of stuff.
Sometimes there's a waiting list. That's true. But I think we need to invest more in things like that, where it's public school and open and access, open to everybody. A lot of times charter schools do have like, a religious component or something as well. And it's basically a way to divert tax dollars to private schools or to for-profit groups.
Education is something that definitely, it feels like being for profit is an issue, right? Because you're like, you're not really looking at making your students better. You're making profit for your company.
Correct.
Well, look at our prison system, right? Like our prison.
Same thing.
Florida, it's there. A lot of them now are for profit, and that's scary because their incentive is to just fill it up with as many people as possible because they paid basically based on the number of inmates they take in. So. And to jack up all those costs and whatnot. So,
well, this is why I'm a big fan of if the government's paying a freaking dime, show the freaking receipt for it. You know what I mean? Make it transparent.
Well, everything's public record. I mean,
that would solve so many issues. And people
it's just like, is it available right now? Like it's usually like there's a lag between now and when you get the information.
Yeah. So like, for us in political things, I mean, everything has to be public record. Every dollar we take in has to be public record. Problem is that right now there's not really anybody in the state of Florida who enforces that or looks into that.
Or even audits for that, to be honest.
Yeah, no. Well, we actually have
there are some state audits.
But ours is because of our stuff is because of the state of Florida. Like it's written into the, the legislation that we have to do these things. And then from the statewide party, we have to do audits on all of our funding. But like you said, there's not a lot of audits on it. I mean, we saw tons of dark money flowing into Seminole County this election cycle. And it was just crazy. I mean, I have a stack of about 22 fake mailers that were sent out by a dark money pack. And so
you can't track that. You can't backtrack that.
No, you really can't track it. And when they were essentially audited, when there were complaints made about them, instead of actually following through, they just closed the pack, and then they didn't have to officially do anything.
Get out of here! Are you serious?
Wow.
Can you just do that? Just disappear?
Yep. Yeah. Basically, there's no legal ramifications.
That's crazy.
Wow.
So, yeah, I mean, they probably spent $5 million in dark money in Seminole County this year. Just based on the number of mailers we received. And
I'm wondering, how did it disappear? How did it just disappear like that, though? Like with no trace?
It's usually PACs donating to other PACs and then funding.
Just money movement, good accounting.
Wait, but I mean, there's got to be some people. I mean, you will think that.
Yeah.
I mean, it takes a lot of coordination to do that. First of all.
Oh, it does. It totally does. And so we saw, for example, a lot of the money was going through a PAC that was registered to a FedEx in Miami.
What?
So it was registered to a PO box in Miami. So there really only needed to be one name on the PAC. And so there was one name, and this person was a political consultant for the Republican Party.
Of course.
for quite a few of the Republicans. And so, I mean, we got these fake mailers. I mean, you should see this stuff. It is garbage. We got stuff that is that's talking about how our candidate is like totally doing illegal stuff, and it's like all fake things. And
But I'm sure it happens both sides. I'm sure that not one side's doing this though. I'm pretty sure it happens.
you might want to. I don't know. In Florida, I'm sure in other states, yes, definitely.
No, I'm just talking. I'm not just talking about Florida. I'm talking about in general. I'm talking about in general.
I'm sure there's some of it, but
Yeah.
I mean, Republicans have clearly made themselves the kings of fake news. So
Yeah,
that's really
well, going back on our conversation. We talked about like how the Republican Party, they do a lot of things that a lot of fake news and a lot of things like that, but I felt like on the Democratic side, there's a lot of extrapolating information to also create fear as well.
I could definitely see that.
So like things like immigration, where I've seen a lot of that, where there's like there'd be anything that was said would be extrapolated into like the Republicans would say something like, oh, I don't agree with illegal immigration, we need to fix it, and then that leads out to, oh, they don't believe in immigration, they don't like immigrants, they don't like me, like, and I'm an American citizen born here, and I had people being like, oh, Trump's gonna kick you out because he doesn't like immigration.
There have been a lot of Vietnamese people voters. That's why they swayed that way too, as well, though. And it's like that also had a huge impact to the Hispanic population. I mean,
and I'll tell you, my mom is one of those who she's really far left, and she really is in her blue bubble and doesn't. She deletes any Facebook friends that don't have similar viewpoints than her, and so she occasionally she'll post something or say something, and I'll basically have to fact check her. Like, I'll have to say, look, be careful, how you're saying this, because that is not exactly what was said. That's not exactly how this was done. It is an extrapolation, like you said, that is, saying that it's worse than it really is. And so we have to definitely be mindful of that, because if we do that, we're going to be seen as just as bad as the other side, right? And so it's definitely scary to see that on my side of the line too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and that's the reason why a lot of, also talking to a lot of Trump supporters as well, because like they see that as well, but also obviously they in their end they're not doing any better, right? And it's kind of sad because an average person sometimes cannot tell the difference if they're doing that or not.
Mm-hmm.
And so, and it's kind of like, how do you even try to minimize that? How do you even, like, what I mean? How do you minimize? How do you?
I mean, I think part of it was like things that, Facebook and Twitter are doing is to kind of monitor what's spread openly across social media. And if it is clearly fake news, then it needs to be stopped. I mean, it doesn't need to be shared publicly. I mean, these social media platforms, I hate to say censorship, because coming from working for a library for quite a few years, I'm all about, banned books and a lack of censorship. But at some point you have to not allow false statements to be portrayed as.
Gotcha.
But is it censorship that we need, or is it just more information? Because that censorship means like we're not going to let it be seen, which is really a it's a negative on our freedom of speech, right? It's really it's really against that.
Well, I mean, with social media, you've kind of signed your life away, right? So I mean, I think essentially, like, freedom of speech doesn't apply to what Facebook allows. Like,
that's different because you're going through
you're going through a company. I get it, but it's still like if you're not allowing people to speak their mind on things, it's a restriction of your rights.
I think there's a difference, like I said before, but about stating something as an opinion versus a fact. And I think that's really where that moderation or censorship, right, needs to come in. It is that if someone, for example, like if someone shares a news article from somewhere like Breitbart, right, and it's clearly false information, that should not be allowed to be shared on social media. Like, or
why is that like something that shouldn't be?
Well, and I mean, I think it's the same for Democrats too. Like, if it's something false, I don't think you should be allowed to use a public sharing platform to spread this false information.
But that it's like a slippery slope, right? Because you could get to a point where like someone's putting something up as a joke or like a satire or something, and it's like obviously
and I think
wrong. But then
we've seen that, right? I think we've seen that. You know, I mean, going back pre-social media, right? We see things like
Onion, you know, or SNL.
Loud. Yeah, SNL is a good example, right? We see things that are parodies that are allowed, that are totally.
But that gets flagged though. Actually, believe it or not, I actually put the Onion article about some.
Yeah, I mean, the Onion's a good example, right? Like,
and I got flagged, and then it's kind of like
to be stated very clearly. I mean, and if
but if you get to that point, like you're going to get to a point where we're going to flag these or we're going to censor them, and then like some of them. Like, how do you know where the line is?
Yeah,
and where do you stop the line?
Who defines what's right and wrong?
Yeah, you're gonna let Facebook decide what the line is on that.
Yeah, I mean,
it's kind of tough though, because especially.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, I think that you know, obviously, there's been a lot of talk about Facebook in the last couple of years, right? And you know, our U.S. senators, you know, interviewing Zuckerberg, and you know, they clearly don't even know what the internet is, and. Interesting. But it's just, I think that at some point there do need to be like laws and regulation, right? Do I think that it's Facebook in particular's job? No. I think that there should be some laws and regulation about false information and spreading information. Yes. Like I do think that needs to be, I mean, you can say what you want, but can you share it publicly? Like, you know, it's kind of similar to, you know, can you scream fire in a theater? No, you can't, because that endangers people in different ways. And so it's very, you know, it's a little bit different, because I feel like you just have to, you know, it's kind of this almost paternalism that we kind of have to do in order to make sure that everybody is safe. And I you know, I think Facebook sometimes comes across as that kind of, you know, screaming fire in a crowded theater. And
so I mean, to be honest though, I feel like, so it goes two-way street in that sense, right? Okay, I feel like, yes, I think Congress and there should be law to catch up to the technology piece of that, where there should be laws to help regulate those big ass companies because they're getting too big. But then now we're saying that government is getting too big now, in a sense, right? So it's kind of like, where's the fine line behind that, in a sense, right? Because obviously certain parties don't want a big government, certain parties want a big government, and it's kind of like TikTok thing. Like,
yeah, and I mean, it's very clear that like we can't keep up with technology as fast as it's changing, right? Like our laws can't, they just can't. So I think it's definitely interesting how that's going to evolve, but I think there's kind of an ethical and a legal line, right? And so there's like, you know, maybe what's happening on Facebook might not be ethical, but is it illegal? No, you know, that kind of thing. So it's like you have to decipher at some point, you know, it's kind of that box of, you know, ethical and legal and not ethical, not legal, and figuring out which box your information falls into. And I mean, I think there's just, I mean, I think that we're going to have to be held to a higher standard, especially.
That's what, like, actually, I just want to say that, like, I think the standard needs to be raised to a bar, no matter what side party you are. But I feel like also in terms of like being able to set that bar, what's the right judgment for that bar, in a sense, right? And I feel like we set the bar so low because, like you said, the knowledge evolved so fast. Like there was no bar in the beginning. Like, so now the expectation is like, okay, you know what? Who's going to do what to get this level? But at the same time, we want to be careful with the censorship. We want to be careful with a lot of different, you know, little aspects of this. And so like, and that leads into emotion now. So like as a human being, we actually act on emotion. And I feel like sometimes when we talk about politics, we need to remove ourselves from that emotion piece of it. But it's hard not. I mean, it's hard.
Oh, totally.
How do you do that?
Well, and especially when it affects your life, right? Like when like, I mean, for me, you know, a big piece of it is, you know, if the Affordable Care Act was repealed, there would be there would be no legal standing for pre-existing conditions to not be, you know, for insurance companies to not be biased against people with pre-existing conditions. And so going back, I mean, just maybe 15 years ago, When I was about 20, my best friend's mother passed away. She died because of something that was, easily treatable. But she didn't go in and she didn't get checked. She didn't go to the doctor because she knew she had just started a new job and her new insurance was going to kick in 90 days. And she said, you know what, I can't, she said, I can't go in. It'll be considered a pre-existing condition. And she waited and she died as a result. And she was a single mom. And so for me, a lot of that, and I'll say a lot of that comes back to like, that's where my heart is. That's where like my passions, my beliefs come from is, this is life or death for so many people. And, it's really a privilege for us all to be able to, discuss it in such an abstract way, when on both sides of the line. I mean, there are people who were, this is life or death for lots of people. I mean, whether it's their business closing because of the economy, whether it's the healthcare situation. I mean, this is it. And I think a lot of times when we're fighting at the higher level, we really forget that.
That's true.
Well, it comes down to again, comes back to like, hey, what is moral, right? What is and what is the actually true necessity for human beings? Because at the end of the day, it comes down to like we are human first, and we tend to forget about that when, especially like, that kind of higher power. And this is why for me, like I was kind of mad. Like these are the best candidates it came up with to begin with. You know what I mean? And I'm like, none of these align with my values, and none of these candidates not even come close to that. Like my standard is a lot higher, but a lot of people don't care about that kind of standard. And just one, maybe they have not seen better. Two, maybe they're, like you said, they're stuck choosing the lesser two evil, and it's just sad to see that. You know what I mean? So it's kind of like,
I do feel like the three of us are also in a similar age range, right? And so taking into account the perspective from an older generation as well. I mean, Joe Biden did clearly win among the Democrats. Like he did. No one got close. I mean, Bernie Sanders sort of, but not really. I mean, and this time, I think in 2016, a lot of people, the Democratic Party really screwed that up with giving Bernie a fair shot in 2016. But in 2020, I mean, it was there. There was a fair shot essentially, and no one even got close. And I think that for those of us that are younger, we tend to skew more towards progressive leaders and not necessarily leftist or conservative, but progressive people who have those ideas and want to move things forward. I know a lot of times we use progressive and liberal interchangeably, but I really do mean progressive, like people who are thinking outside the box and moving things
remember
forward.
back in the day, liberal used to be a good word, not anymore.
Hey, I still identify as liberal.
I actually, like you said that last time with Tara, and I also like don't think that's true. Like, I don't think liberal was like a good thing. If you're in Florida, it wasn't a good thing, right? Like if you're like a rural area, it's not a good thing.
I mean, I have a guy down the street who has a flag up that says "I drink liberal tears in my coffee" or something.
Yeah, like liberal was. It's like it depends on where you're at in the spectrum.
That's true. I guess
and
what
then
region
that's
you're at, right?
yeah. So you might have been in a circle that was like more liberal or like more okay with being liberal than like where I was. Like for me,
Florida,
growing up, I did not hear good.
In South Florida, it was very progressive, right? But I grew up in a school where like everybody just was just conservative. So it was, And so like, but I mean, either way though, like, what I'm trying to say though, it's just the mindset. I feel like we are aligning to a certain degree where it comes down to is like, I feel like being loyal to a party, it feels like it's more crucial, especially this election. I have friends who are like, "Oh yeah, if you're not with us or you're against us, a big deal."
Yeah,
and it's kind of sad to see that. I'm like, you're an idiot if you say that, because personally, this doesn't matter in terms like this, like whether you're aligned to a party or not. Like it has to come down to that principle of that people that you're choosing to become your president. Does that align your value, right? How can you scrutinize because the way you grew up and the way your values might be different from mine? How can you just judge that based on that? Like everyone has different background, everyone's came up differently. And I have friends that said that. It's kind of sad to see that. And even the smart.
Well, but to some extent, I mean, I have some friends who, have basically stopped talking to some of their family members, and
I've
part
seen that too.
yeah, and I mean, and part of that is that they've been told that they have to apologize. Like they've been like that they have to that they need to give their Trump supporter friends space after this election, or empathy. And it's like the same people that are calling for that are people like, you know, Rick Santorum, who talked about same-sex marriage being bestiality. Like, I mean, it's like the people who are saying that and the people that are putting that forward just don't seem to understand that like we've been attacked. Like we've been attacked for so long. I mean, there's somebody down the street. I mean, the sign that my boyfriend has to pass every day on his way to work says, Trump, no more bullshit, is the Trump flag. And that's what it says. And so it's like you just have to, we've had to deal with this for the last 4+ years. We've had to we've had to put up with it, and we've had to, suck it up, suck it up, buttercup, right? Liberal snowflakes, blah, 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 blah. We've had to kind of put our feelings aside and continue to march forward. And so now we're seeing so many people that are like, oh, be kind and be gentle with your Trump friends. And
from which side? From which side? I'm sorry. Like, I don't know, from
kind of moderates. I mean,
really.
I mean, so my friend's mom, who I'm talking about specifically, she was, her mom told her she needs to apologize to her aunt, who she, and her aunt said, how, you've abandoned me and I'm not going to be able to get to see pictures of your children and all of these things. And she's like, look, I don't want to subject, my family, or I can't subject my emotional and mental, energy towards dealing with your BS anymore, towards dealing with stuff that you're, that is outwardly, racist, homophobic, that is outwardly inciting violence. And so we're seeing a lot of that kind of call for liberals to be the ones to reach out, for Democrats to be the ones to reach out.
Yeah,
I
those fears.
So okay. First of all, I mean, yes and no. I mean, at the end of the day, the Democrats tend to focus on unity, right? And in order to do that, you have to do. I feel like that's part of the job to a certain degree, but also at the same time, I get where you're coming from, because in terms of, okay, yeah, for example, 2016 happened. Oh yeah, Trump is president. Now suck it up, now liberals. Okay, guess what? The election's over. Blah blah. And yeah, to a certain degree, I feel like both sides were attacked to each other to certain, but what I'm saying is that I had liberal friends who's like, you know what, if you're not in the blue side, you're pretty much against us in a sense, and I'm like, no, it's not that. It's just that, I mean, I just don't like the candidates now. I mean, it's not like I'm on the blue side or red side.
But remember that you're coming from a place of privilege to be able to even say, right? Like, that's the big thing, is like, when we hear that, a lot of times when we hear that, it comes from, people who are educated, people who are largely white, people who are, largely male. I mean, you're, for the most part, I mean, your individual, your livelihood is not.
But this is happening again, though. I've seen this a lot among like different just circle tiers of friends.
So I'm gonna say this, right? Like, so in 2016, when when Trump was voted in, on the liberal side, there was a lot of "not my president," right? A lot of that. So like, coming back now and having the conservatives be flipped, like pushing back, it seems like just the irony, it's just something that's gonna happen, right? So like, I understand like the family members who aren't talking to each other and like got mad because of the whole thing, like that's something separate, but the backlash that's happening because from the conservatives on this election seems natural, and it seems like something that we shouldn't really put against them, because like both sides are doing the same thing, and it's very like new. It's a new like this is like a natural.
It's just more
reaction.
Transparent. I don't think it's new. I think it's more transparent now with social media and stuff like that. I don't think it's new though.
I think that a piece of it. So I'll kind of give you something that really frustrated me this week. Right. Yesterday I was driving downtown, and it's very clear that Biden won the electoral vote. Very clear at this point.
Mm-hmm.
By any source, even Fox News, who is traditionally super conservative, has called it for Biden. and Trump's threatening lawsuits, Trump's threatening all these things, saying
a lot of people think that a lot of the election was rigged and stuff in a sense for certain votes and for certain counties like
well,
Pennsylvania.
well, and I mean that's largely factless, right? Like there are not facts that back this
Right.
up.
You
Correct.
need like
Yep.
hundreds of thousands of
Hard
votes
concrete.
to
You
go
need
the
actual
other
concrete,
way.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean at this
100,000
point,
fake
Joe
votes.
Biden has won this election by
It's a landslide. It's like a big landslide now. So yeah.
Yeah. So anyhow, so I was driving yesterday, and there's a group of Trump supporters that sits at 50 and Bumby. Basically, they've been out there They were out there before the election, but they're out there now every single day after the election, with signs saying, "Don't let them steal the election."
Mm-hmm.
I think to me, that's definitely different than the "not my president" sentiment. Like, not my president means this person does not represent me. This person does not represent what I want for our country and our values. And to me, that's very much a First Amendment thing, is very much like you're allowed to say what you want, right? But implying that the election was stolen is a little different than saying, Joe Biden's not my president, right? Joe Biden's not
It's a
who I
different statement for sure. Obviously, yeah.
And so,
Yeah,
I mean,
but
that's literally the signs that they're holding are saying, stop the steal is what it says. Like, it literally says, stop the steal 2020.
But I feel like due to the lack of education, they don't understand that the recount, the auditing happens regardless, right? It will happen. It doesn't matter whether and whether
they're just holding on to hope. That's what they're all doing.
Yeah. But that's just lack of education awareness, though, to be honest, though.
Well, and that's a whole nother thing, right? Like, I mean, it's just sad. Like, it's frustrating, but it's also sad. And I mean, there's people honking for them. I mean, it's not a small group of supporters.
No, it's not. But
It's not.
I feel like now the two people cannot talk to each other. And that, I feel like that divisiveness, I feel like now that Biden has won, I feel like that divisiveness may be stronger, to be honest. I don't see it coming closer.
I think that there are things that President Trump could have done to make it more, less divisive. But I think he's taken that divisive opportunity because he's a showman, right? Like, he's a TV host.
It's entertainment at the end of the day.
He's an entertainer, right? And so he wants the conflict. He wants that. I mean, we've seen it, he's advocated violence against Black Lives Matter protesters. He's advocated violence against, he's suggested that, white nationalists are people that, that there's some of them are good people. A lot of them are good people, that kind of thing. And it's,
I don't know. That seems like out of context a little bit. I've like listened to that, and he said there's good people on both sides, but he also at the same next sentence he said that there's people like he definitely went against it, like against the white nationalists in the next sentence. But
then he also says,
but he also repeated multiple times. He repeated.
Yeah, I get it, right? Like, but like I don't think anybody is for white nationalists, right? Like, I feel like that's just
but when the KKK is like on one side, you got to reevaluate like where you.
I mean, but they have to choose a side, right?
They just choose a side.
They have to choose. What if they chose the Democrats? What if they chose the Democrats? Then you guys would be pro KKK members. I don't think that's true.
No,
I don't think most people are not a pro white nationalists in general. It's just not a thing.
I think it would definitely make me reevaluate my situation if.
But they chose to because it had nothing to do with that, though. You know what I mean? Like, they chose because they believe it aligns to the value. You know what I mean? Like, at the end of the day, the align. It's not like
it's the two-party system forces them into one of them, so they chose one over the other. I don't know. You're right. Like, you should like look at it and be like, this seems weird. Yeah. Why are they here with us? Why are they standing next to me in this? Yeah. They're like,
I mean, one side is protesting for, justice among, to stop the killing of young Black men. And one side is supported by the KKK. Like, for me, it's like, it becomes very clear that like,
well, the messaging doesn't help, right? The way he portrays himself, it doesn't help at all at the cost.
He needs a marketing guy or a PR guy.
Yeah. Well, okay, so let me ask you this, Brittany, then.
Yeah.
Okay, so we know that Trump has done a lot of bad things, okay? For sure, what I mean? Let me test your bubble. Can you name 3 good things Trump has done?
Oh, jeez.
I'm just going. Can you name 3 good things? At least he tried to do. How about that? He tried to do.
I mean, so I mean, it is all relative, right? Good is all relative. Good is interesting. I mean, I do think it was good. I do think that to some extent, our trade agreements need to be reevaluated, right? They need to be looked at. Now, do I think, the way he necessarily went about things is great?
That's a different story, though. Okay,
Yeah.
okay. At least you admit that part. That's good.
Yeah, we're talking about policies over like
Yeah.
actual what he's doing. It seems
Yeah.
how he goes about everything seems like the wrong way.
Well, Brittany, there's no asking that question because I feel like when I talk to my liberal friends, they can't even name one, right?
Right. Yeah.
So what?
I do think it was beneficial, that he did shut down, access to the country when he did, and people, coming and going and whatnot. I think that it probably should have been done to a more extreme extent if we had done it for a very short period of time. We would have been in a much better situation. I also feel that there was, a lack of transparency on his side and not telling us what he knew, earlier on, when he did.
Or he didn't trust his sources, to be honest. And if this was when he pay it down, you know what I mean?
Yeah. So I mean, that's another thing. I mean, I think a lot of people in general like that he comes from kind of that business person perspective. I don't necessarily agree with some of the things that he's done, but I mean, I could definitely see why people would appreciate them. Like, even pulling out of, of the, like, I mean, not me. I'm going to say this is not something I approve. I think is good, but I could see why people might think that, pulling out of either, the Paris Accords or the World Health Organization, I could see why people might think that's a good idea. Like they feel like it's not, there's no return on value there, right? And also, I mean, he cut, for example, the pandemic response team essentially, right? Like that's one of those kind of, you gotta know the facts.
You mean after the I guess what
it was before. Yeah.
I think there's a little misunderstanding that part of that.
Right.
I remember reading about that a little bit, but I see what you're saying though.
That's what I would say. I would say don't take that as like that's the statement, right? Like look into it. But I think it makes sense to kind of cut some of the fat in government. I do.
In the right place at the right time. To be honest.
Right. Exactly. And I think that's. I think a lot of us want a more efficient government, right? Like we see
totally agree.
For sure.
We see the waste, right? And so I think that's definitely, one of the big things that people agree with. I mean, I have Democrats here locally who are definitely more moderate that say, oh, well, my investments are doing okay, so Trump must be good.
Oh my God, my investments are doing great. Like we don't even have a pandemic in our economy. I know, right? Like economy's booming.
So I mean, that is something that like people like him for, is they feel that he actually did that he made this happen. But where I see it is I see the people that are unemployed, the people that are literally like the girl who waxes my eyebrows was telling me that her boyfriend works in hospitality and she's a service worker, right? And she's telling me like she's like, me and my boyfriends just started sewing masks. My mom showed us how to sew and loaned us her sewing machine, and that's the only way we were able to survive and like pay our rent.
Mm-hmm.
And so like, I mean, it's just a lot of it, I think, is just being out of touch. And I'm not sure that either Democrats or Republicans are really in touch with the majority of the American people.
Yeah. One last thing I have a question on, right? Like as a Democrat, I feel like the liberal side is much more inclined to a bigger government. Just like more programs that are helping people and things like that.
More enforcement, like
more enforcement, but
business things like that. Yeah.
But it's been pretty proven that the government is horrible at using our funds, right? Yeah. So why do you want to give them more money, more power to do stuff when it's so inefficient?
Yeah. Well, I think if you look back at things like the New Deal, and FDR and kind of coming out of that and providing, jobs and funding, or even looking at things like, I see you've got a Gator shirt on too. So are you as well?
Yes, alum right here.
Okay, yeah. So we all went to UF. So, for example, I mean, even, Abraham Lincoln, who the Republican Party touts as, as their president, right? One of their presidents. I mean, Abraham Lincoln, provided grant funding that started quite a few universities, including the University of Florida. That is how the University of Florida, which became a large well-to-do university in the Southeast. And so, I mean, when you look at kind of, Abraham Lincoln, FDR's New Deal, I mean, you look at, I'm trying to think here. I went to the museum in Austin, and I learned about, what's his name? Like, what's the president that came out of there?
I actually went to Austin recently too. I forgot. Actually, I know you're talking about too. Oh, I'm drawing a blank right now.
It was let me see here. Sorry.
It's not Hoover. Someone else.
No, it's not Hoover. But
no.
but basically, you look at the programs that have come out of these things, and so I feel super embarrassed that I can't remember that, but it's been years. But basically, we see these things like, PBS funding, right? That provides educational information to the general population. I mean,
Johnson. Is it Johnson?
No, it wasn't Johnson. It was
because I know Johnson. I know Johnson came from Texas as well.
Yeah, it was who was it? President Austin. Let me see here. Sorry, I'm just gonna check here.
I can't remember either.
We're looking it up.
Can
Eisenhower.
No.
Eisenhower came from Texas.
Maybe it was. I was like trying to think here. Oh yeah. Okay. So it was Johnson. You're right. Sorry.
Johnson.
So LBJ. So the LBJ Museum is based in Austin, Texas.
Yeah.
And a lot of that was like, he was literally a public school teacher on the border between the US and Mexico.
He's a little town, by the way, after him.
Yeah. And he saw that kids were coming in with no shoes. He saw that kids were coming in with no school lunch. He saw these things early in his career. And so a big piece of what he did was focus on that early childhood education. Head Start funding started, kind of during his term. And so essentially those are things that do create a larger government. Frankly, I mean, they are, but I mean, for me, a lot of it is taking care of our children. And I think that unfortunately, we don't take very good care of our children right now. And
well,
so
think about this though. I feel like back in the days, I feel like we were more of a community based than individualism, right? In a sense.
Yeah.
And with that sense of community, also keep in mind, I feel like back in the day, also too, the government was a lot smaller and to a certain degree less corrupt. To a certain degree, right? And I feel like, I feel like as our population got bigger, we needed a little bit bigger government to balance that out. But also at the same time, we when as everyone got more prosper, I feel like people got more greedy, and it became corrupt, and not to a certain point that's in front of our eyes. It's just behind the scenes that we can't even see, right? And so. And this is why a lot of people don't trust that big government situation don't trust the usage of those fundings. And that because now everybody thinks that if you're a politician, you're greedy and you're dirty.
Mm-hmm. Everyone's dirty.
Everyone's dirty.
The whole government.
I mean, I think a lot of people want more efficiencies within government, right? And
efficiency and transparency.
Yeah, and transparency. Yeah, I agree. And I mean, I think that a lot of cities and counties and even some states do a good job of providing that transparency, but at the same time, there's definitely a very low bar currently. And
for sure,
with the internet and with all of these things, I mean, it should be much more accessible. It should be much more just easy to look through, easy to see. What's in this budget, what's really included.
You know how long it took me to look over the what's called the Orange County budget situation. Not only that, Santa Monica ones as well, and like Miami. I'm like, holy shit! How
like, you may be the only person who looks into that.
You're the only one that doesn't do that for a living. That looks into that.
Yeah, it's just that I mean, the reason why I'm able to do it because I have an aspect of how to look things like that, because I know what to look for certain section. But if an average person will not have that clue in the mindset.
It's not even just an average person. I don't think I could look at that and think I know what's going on. It's
definitely
just
not
so convoluted.
for me, I go to, my friends that I trust that do look into that stuff, and I have those discussions. But how many of us even do that, right? Like,
That's true. How many people take a step to do that? I have to
Yeah.
ask a lot of questions to my friend who works as a budget analyst. I'm like, all right, what did this mean? Because I had no clue what this means. Why this number is this? Like, what is it underline? Like, it's just mind blowing how confusing it is.
It is. It
Yeah.
is. And I think, I mean, we see a lot of things here locally, like some of our city commissions meet at like 3 o'clock on a Tuesday, right? And it's like, okay, how is that accessible for
To anybody? Yeah, I agree. Yeah.
And
Yeah, but
some of
really,
our-
like, there's only so much time. Like, how if you want to like have all these, are they only gonna work on the weekend? Is that how it's gonna work? Like all these meetings are only gonna be on the weekend,
Or
Is that-
4 p.m.
or
6
after
p.m.
6 p.m. or whatever.
Yeah,
Like it
that's
seems
true, though.
there's like
But I
there's a
mean,
lot of stuff
that-
going on, and it's hard to like schedule time.
Well, so like our school board, right? Our school board meets while teachers are still in school.
Really?
No teacher can even go to the school board meeting unless they take time off from work.
Maybe
That's
they should have like a
crazy.
rotating thing where like every
Yeah. Or I mean, how often do you guys meet in a school board? Once a week, if even? I mean,
Well, so a school board member is technically, I believe, a part-time job here in Seminole County.
gotcha.
County commissioners are full-time jobs.
Gotcha. Oh, that's so it's different, two different spots. Okay, I got you saying that. Okay.
Yeah, we have a variety of things, and most of them are part-time positions. So.
I feel like there's a lot of moving pieces to kind of align that. But again, to talk about efficiency, right? If you think that you would think that they would try to at least kind of cater towards the teachers because they're longer work hours in a sense, right? And they don't.
Also,
And-
now with the internet, we should be able to like have all this stuff online so people can look
And
at,
record it,
give
and
them some
record it.
time to look
Yeah.
at it, give
Yeah.
them some time to vote on it. You know, like stuff like that. It's just
Yeah. And a lot of it is, a lot of it is frankly like within the government, when we look at that stuff, I mean, our infrastructure sucks, right? Like it just does. Like we should be putting like, especially like, I'll tell you just from the state of Florida perspective, right? I mean, even before the pandemic, I had to like log on to that unemployment website like
it's horrible.
times
I know.
before I could actually process my thing. And that was before this like
Yeah.
surge of millions of people basically typing.
Yeah, it crashed. That website crashed a
Mhm.
lot. I mean,
Yeah.
I have. It was
Well, it's
definitely-
terrible.
Yeah,
I mean, I had to go on at 3 o'clock in the morning. That was the only way I was able to access it after the pandemic. Like, literally. And I mean, it's an ancient website, and our infrastructure, and especially these things that are not beneficial to the Republican side, like unemployment, that really it's just they see it as an expense a lot of times. That those are things that nothing has been put into. No money has been put into that. Our affordable housing here in the state of Florida has been ransacked financially. They've ransacked that affordable housing fund. So even though basically a law was passed saying you had to have this affordable housing stuff, they don't legally have to fund it. So it's like this whole plan happens, all this happens, and then the legislature just carves it out and takes the money. And there's no accountability for that, none whatsoever. I mean,
That's crazy.
accountability is that you vote them out. That's it. And guess
And it's not been for a while too. And it's
Yeah.
been for a while. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's nuts. I know.
Yeah.
I mean,
So
okay.
let's since you're already on grievances and stuff,
know.
let's ask you like what would be 3 things that you would change in the government? If you,
I think you talked about healthcare, right? And
yeah.
but
I mean,
let me
yeah.
ask you this though: how will you even tackle, let's say that the
Mhm.
ACA? How will you even make it better? Let's talk about
Yeah.
that.
I mean, obviously, it's I'm not a health.
No. Obviously, let me just throw it out there, right? Because for
Yeah.
me, I mean, I have my 2 cents on that. I mean, everybody
Yeah.
has a 2 cents on that. Yeah.
So my biggest thing is that I don't believe our healthcare should be tied to our jobs. Like I think if we can somehow separate that, right? If we can,
What do you mean tied to the jobs? Like,
sorry.
what do you mean by tied to the jobs?
So right now, essentially, the majority of people who have healthcare, it's because of their current job in the
Okay.
United States. And so, like for example, I have healthcare through my job, right? I
Okay.
still pay into it, whatever. But it is it's tied to our jobs. And so the ACA was really kind of the only thing that really made it accessible if you can't get healthcare through your job, like if you're unemployed, if you're a
Small business owner, stuff like that.
yeah, exactly. Small business owner, which small business owner it just wasn't affordable, and it's still
No,
not.
it was still pricey. Like, my parents have.
yeah,
my
it's
parents
just
have-
unaffordable in general.
Yeah. So I think that separating that from our jobs is going to be a huge thing. So just giving
But how would
access.
that help? Because I feel like the job pays for half of that, right? Doesn't it? Something like that. Like,
It depends. It depends on the job, but
because the reason why a job the company has that big of a, I guess, policy is because the large people kind of pulls in the same amount, and because I mean,
right.
the
Yeah.
expenses goes
It's
down.
because of the insurance. Yeah.
The insurance,
So
yeah.
so for example, like I mentioned before, I had talked to the Japanese consulate general,
Yeah.
and he was explaining, he's like, I don't understand, the US healthcare system. He said, because, in Japan, basically you walk into whichever clinic, whichever hospital, whichever doctor, and the costs are the same. They're relatively regulated across the board, and maybe the government supports a piece of that or whatever, but essentially, your medications are not priced at $500 a pop. You're all of these different things. I mean, we hear about the cost of insulin going up here. So I think separating it from your jobs and making it more of a government piece with access for everybody, I think that would change so many people's lives. And save lives. I mean, and I think it would also long term save us on things like Social Security, right? Like we see people going in with their Medicare, and they've got all these health problems because they haven't had that preventative health care. I mean, we have a pretty high uh, infant mortality rate, our mothers and newborns, basically a miscarriage rate here in the United States compared to other areas. And a lot of it is that prenatal care, it's that preventative care, that being able to go to a doctor when you're pregnant. And a piece of it is, because it is tied to, a lot of it's tied to full-time jobs. And so, for example, here in the state of Florida, a lot of single mothers are they work for minimum wage at hourly jobs. They don't have they don't have access to healthcare through their jobs. And then don't have vacation time, don't have things like that. I read a study a couple of years ago, and so I don't know if this has changed since then, but that the average woman after she gives birth has to go back to work in 13 days. And so
13 days.
Really?
13 days.
Holy
Because
crap.
they either don't have paid time off, they don't have paid maternity leave, they don't have access to, they have to get back to work. And so, and that includes women who have C-sections. I mean, that includes so much. And so when we look at, the plight of the woman, essentially, there's a lot going on here. And for a lot of us on the Democratic side, we see it as kind of, generally Republicans, want to take care of the baby before it's born. And the Republicans want to do that, but the Democrats want to take care of the baby after it's born. And so, we kind of consider ourselves, we're the true pro-lifers, right? So that's the, that's kind of where we come from. But sorry, I know I kind of jumped around.
No, it's fine. I mean, I think part of it, like, you touch based on the whole, insulin going up in a sense, right? I feel like at least I feel like part of it is that, I know from the Republican side of things, people like, I know some of my friends like, hey, well, at least listen, Trump took a stand on pharmaceutical, call them out, and hey, you can, I'm going to make at least executive order from you guys raising that, the prices for certain drugs and stuff like that, and took a stand against the pharmaceutical thing. I mean, obviously, a executive order can act any time they want, in a sense, but as soon as that's over once he's gone, right? And so, and then part of it is, I feel like, to fix the healthcare, I mean, obviously, I'm not an expert, but you need to fix the whole pharmaceuticals with insurance together. I feel like that's a middleman. And Japan does it differently because, also keep in mind, their sense of community first. Community comes before individualism, okay? So therefore, I've been to Japan plenty of time, and let me tell you, they love to protect the elders there. They're like, people literally get up from the chair of the bus, and they say, hey, sit. Everybody gets up, and for one elder comes as soon as they walk in, like literally see everybody get up, not just one person. Everybody get up, and it's crazy. And that sense of community is kind of rare to find that.
It is.
And
I mean, definitely Japan is not. We are Japan. That is,
we have a different culture here in America.
But I mean, listen, I don't mind taking a pride sense of individualism because that's what makes us creative, and that's what makes us, have that freedom of expression in a sense. But also, there has to be a fine balance. Okay, at the end of the day, not everybody, as like you mentioned, being privileged, right? Not everybody is as privileged as you are,
Right.
and having affordable healthcare, it does help, but you need to solve the whole insurance thing,
Yeah.
and I feel like even with the current what's called Affordable Healthcare Act, just open it up, just
Yeah.
from
Yeah.
I
good
feel like the
examples.
ACA was
Well-
just meant to like be good for the insurance companies. Like it's
Yeah.
all it is.
Correct, and
It
only
wasn't
for
good
four
for
insurance companies.
people. Yeah, it wasn't good
Well,
for
it's because
people.
we feel hamstrung by the current way that things
It's a
are.
lobbyist. It's a lobbyist. I'm telling you. It
Yeah.
comes down to- it
Oh,
comes down to-
totally. I mean, money in politics is just
Yeah.
horrendous, right? I mean, lobbyists. I mean, for all different from all different sides,
Yeah.
it's not good.
And I think that leads to like, listen, we obviously people outside of America, everybody views us snobby. It's just true. We're snobby, we're spoiled, and obviously we didn't do our part as well, like because we kind of act like that during the glory days, in a sense, as during the early '90s and late '90s, in a sense, and I just feel like I mean, you and I travel outside the country, right? You and I travel outside. We actually appreciate what we have here. And this is what a lot of immigrants that come to the United States, they appreciate what they have here. And that's just why they actually fight, and especially like in the Asian culture. I know a lot of Asian people voted for Trump because they want to fight for that freedom in a sense, right?
They want to keep the culture the way it is because that's what helped them push above where they were, right? Like get them out of their like situation.
The situation, yeah. And I feel like we haven't done a good job in a sense I mean, even though again, and I can see why Trump went for America first in a sense, and I can see how it resonated with some people. But also keep in mind though, you're the world leader. People look up to you, and he tend to forget about that in a sense. But I guess his message was like, we got to take care of ourselves for people who could take care of others. But that means, guess what? If you do that, and you stop caring about others, someone else is going to be better at this. Hey, China, it's going to come out. It's like, hey, guess what? United States is not going to do this. I'll do this for you. And they're going to look good too as well now. And then and then you complain about being superpower.
That's what I'm saying. He needs a PR person.
Understand
the repercussions of what you're doing.
Yeah. so it's like a catch-22 in a sense, right? I'm like, dude, what do you, in a sense that, but in terms of what I'm trying to get to is that we have to have a fine balance on things. Even if America wants to remain superpower and try to try to be better in terms of certain standards. Like we don't hold our pollution to a higher standard, and that's an issue.
Yeah, that is a big issue.
Well, I saw that when I lived in California, right? Like I saw that. I mean, I moved to California and I was like, wait, they have smog inspections. They have things like that. That's not stuff we have in Florida. Like drive your car that's leaking oil up and down the
You have compost here, which
why
do you even do that in Florida? There's none of that.
We have actual composting. It's crazy.
Well, but okay, not all is shining blue there. I mean, look at the homeless situation, right? There's a reason why homeless is worse in California than it is in Florida, right?
Sure.
Well, but look at Orlando. I mean,
Orlando's been bad. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah, Orlando's been. I mean, I worked, like I said, for the library system. I mean, we basically were, the bathroom, the air conditioning, everything for the homeless population. And so,
well, we don't take care of people. I feel like half of those folks are just mentally ill to a certain degree. Some of them could be just former veterans that just got bad situations.
Well, and a lot of what you see is the men, but there are quite a few homeless women and children as well.
A lot of families in general.
Yeah, and so I mean that's bad in both parts, and I think that if we're going to see ourselves as America first or taking care of our stuff first, we've definitely got to look at those things like
correct
our homeless our homeless veterans, right? Like why are any American veterans homeless? Like
in the first place in general, yeah.
Why are they even there? And I mean, when you look at a lot of that, I mean, a lot of it is based on things like not having access to medication, or not having access to treatment, and so it's.
But sometimes they don't want it.
I think a lot of it.
Yeah.
Well, and that's true. That's true.
You can't force someone into like.
Yeah.
That is true, but I think there are definitely people who are not, who without medication are not mentally capable of making those decisions.
And that's tough though. There's a fine line there now.
Totally. And I think that I think that just having more responsibility towards our children, our veterans, you know, taking care of them from a health perspective, making sure that they're fed, you know, making sure that they
I
have
feel shelter, having a shelter, it goes a long way because now you have a sense of belonging, right? Because once you lose a sense of belonging, you just wandering off in a sense, like, and I think with no sense of belonging and having a purpose when you come back, I feel like a lot of people tend to get lost. I mean, just having that lack of purpose. By the way, we're not going to stop homelessness here, but what I'm saying is that, and you're right. In order to be quote unquote America first, take care of people first, in a sense, right?
Yeah.
Not just, you know, and it's
not just cut yourself off, but also like work on yourself if you're going to do that, which we haven't been doing.
And I think a lot of people, you know, judge countries based on, you know, how they treat their vulnerable populations.
That's true.
And so thinking about it from that perspective, you know, when we look at this country, we're clearly not doing a good job with that. And I think that, you know, when you look at who's working towards making that better, it's clearly the Democratic Party and not the Republican Party. And I wish that wasn't the case. It shouldn't be the case. Like that should not be the case. Like it should not be a partisan issue.
I feel like the Republican and the Democrat has a lot of overlapping common grounds, but just different way of approaching it. And and I think that we talked about this with Tara episode as well, in a sense. And the reason, but I feel like, you know, going back to what my earlier statement, now both parties can just not talk to each other. And I feel like it's more divisive in a sense that, you know, it's my way or the highway type of deal. And it sucks that it feels that way. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, well, I will say, you know, my mom always says this, and she talks about it from kind of a baby boomer perspective, is they were taught not to discuss politics.
Really?
Not to have those discussions. It wasn't polite conversation. So like she didn't even
said the same thing. Said the same thing. I just don't talk about it because I don't know enough to talk about it. But you know, like she said, it was an impolite thing that was from the boomer generation.
Oh, totally. And so so they didn't even have these conversations. So it wasn't necessarily that they didn't have these viewpoints or these things, but I feel like people in our generations are more likely to talk to people. I mean, I walked around, I had a Democrat party pre-COVID for the 2018 thing. And I had a party and I invited basically people to come meet Democratic candidates from my neighborhood. I had just moved into the neighborhood and I said, hey, I'm having a party. You want to come meet some candidates? And I had one guy who was of the baby boomer generation just scream at me. Like he didn't have a discussion. He didn't, like, he literally just.
At your party?
No. I around and handed out like
okay, gotcha. Okay, are you party? Like, that's crazy.
No. You should have came to the party.
I know, right? I'm like, what
a party. No, so I walked around and handed out invitations to my neighbors. I knocked on doors. I talked to people. And I said, hey, if you're welcome to come meet these people. And this one guy just like went off. Like he didn't say no thanks. He didn't say no, I'm a Republican. Like, no, he was like, oh, stop telling your people to be obstructionists, blah, 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 blah. Just kept screaming at me. And like to the point where I finally just walked away and he's still screaming at me as I'm walking down the street.
That's crazy.
Whereas I talked to one of his neighbors and the guy was like, oh, I mean, I'm a registered Republican. I'm pretty far, you know, I'm pretty conservative, and blah, blah, blah. And he's like, so can I ask you, you know, what do you like about this? Why do you feel, you know, connected to the Democratic Party? And I was explaining to him, I'm like, you know, I mean, my two biggest things are public education and healthcare. And I walked him through, you know, my personal story of why, you know, why healthcare is so important. Me and why, you know, I mean, almost everybody in my family has pre-existing conditions. If that was going to be the case, I mean, none of us would qualify. You know, I have a thyroid problem. My mom's a breast cancer survivor. My dad has heart problems. I mean, none of us would, and he's had melanoma removed. So, I mean, we all have essentially serious conditions that have been, you know, that'll be problematic for, you know, if pre-existing conditions were to be allowed by insurance companies again. So, and currently the only protections are from the ACA. The only legal protections are through the ACA. And so, you know, I had this conversation with this man and we actually had a good conversation and we were able to talk back and forth about it. And then I talked to my cousin and I mean, he's very passionate. He's very concerned.
I mean, but like you said, right, I feel like certain people don't communicate on that, right?
Right. They just aren't interested and don't want to have those conversations.
I mean, it's already hard to have this kind of conversation in people in our age group already.
Right.
Imagine in their generation as well, right?
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
so, and it's tough because, and we get judged by that. I'm sorry, we just do, and people just judge you. I mean, to be honest, I'd rather have this kind of conversation. I don't care if I get judged. I'm trying out there to try to understand and listen and try to get people a different perspective.
Like a knowledge expansion versus
Correct. Yeah.
before
Listen,
they're just like, just shut up and like listen.
I'm definitely not an expert in everything. A lot of things I'm curious to see what your point of view is and stuff. Like I mean, I can tell you're passionate about why you care about those two things, and that your values align with the Democrat. And I can tell that why you're so passionate, even to volunteer your 10, 20 hours, sometimes 30 hours a week, just to do what you do. And for sure, I can feel that in a sense, right? A lot of people, at least people don't even take the time to acknowledge that, to even have this kind of conversation. And just that to me is kind of disappointing.
Yeah.
And it's also a reason why we're getting more divisive. Because we don't have the conversations that we need.
Yeah, I mean, but I do think that it is, it is a little bit dependent on our leaders too, to encourage us to have those conversations. And I think that is not what we've been told for the past 4 years.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
All right, we're gonna wind this down, and we're gonna finish this off with our free range session, venting, do all this stuff. I don't have a vent, but I have something else to talk about that we can do. But yeah,
Brittany, go first, Brittany. Let's let Brittany go first.
Yeah, Brittany, you go first. Tell us what you got to talk about today.
Anything you want to let go of your chest. And let's go about it.
Anything that just like makes me like, oh my gosh. Yeah. So So I was so frustrated this past week. My washing machine started leaking.
Oh, the new one?
Oh no!
You had it for less than
It's not a new one.
I thought you had it less than 4 years, 3-4 years.
Well, I've had the house less than 3 years, but my washing machine was
oh my god! It started leaking.
It started leaking. So I'm doing laundry, and I look down, and I'm just standing in a puddle.
Wait, is it by the garage?
So it's inside. So mine is inside a house.
Oh, okay. Oh, that
Usually,
sucks.
a lot of times in Florida, they're in the garage.
Yeah.
But here, so mine, I actually have a little laundry room. So mine starts leaking, and I'm like, oh my God, this is going to be, it's going to cost me a fortune. It's going to do all these things. So I call a handy friend, and I'm like, hey, I know you've worked on, washing machine work. Can you come help? So he comes over, him and his wife come over, and they figure out what the problem is. He finds the hose that's leaking. We can't find the hose anywhere. They don't have them at Lowe's. They don't have them at
It's not a standard hose. It's not a standard hose.
Yeah. So we do end up finding like a generic version at Home Depot, right? So we go to Home Depot, we pick up this hose, he reinstalls it, he does all these things, everything looks good. And I'm like, oh, thank God. Like that was my whole day one day.
Mm-hmm.
And so we do that. I start a load of laundry, and the hose springs out of the wall.
Oh my God.
It's my laundry room. Like with the dryer plugged in and everything. So I'm like,
oh my God, it's so scary.
so it floods. Like there's like an inch of water throughout my laundry room.
Oh
right?
my
But
God.
how are your walls though?
Well, that's what I was worried about, because I have like brand new baseboards, and like it wasn't in the wall because it sprung out of the wall.
Okay.
It was like everywhere. Like all of a sudden I'm sitting on the couch and I hear this noise when
screwing everyone crazy.
it goes on the wrench cycle, and it goes and it sounds like a hose just like spraying in my house. Run, like I throw like my stuff that's on my lap, and I run, and it's just like flooded. And by the time I like stop it, and then I'm like, oh my God, I have to unplug stuff before I get electric.
That's crazy.
So it was like an inch of water in my laundry room under my washer and dryer too. So I'm like, shit, I'm gonna get electrocuted. So basically I had to spend another like 2 hours mopping up the stuff, and I didn't have like a wet vac. So I'm doing like old towels and stuff like that. But essentially I was like, crap. So this thing was not plugged into the wall right. But apparently, so like this week I've been running around like trying to figure out what's going on and how to get it to stay in. So basically I find out that a lot of times people literally just use zip ties to hold them in place instead of
that easy.
Oh wow, that's it.
so I zip tied the little hose to like the hot and cold water heater, like knobs, and but it was all fine. But it was like, oh my god, what a disaster.
Wow.
So at least you had to get a new washer though on the bright side.
Right. Yeah. Luckily it saved me a couple $100. Like the piece was like 15
But
bucks.
how's the baseboard?
Yeah, is your like
So it's all fine because I saw it right away. Like luckily I was doing laundry while I was home. Like sometimes I do laundry.
It didn't soak up the water.
It didn't
Yeah.
soak in. I have tile floors.
Oh,
so
okay. Did you use a fan to blow
right
it at
away.
least? Did you use a fan to blow it dry at least?
I didn't use a fan, but we literally wiped everything down with towels, me and my boyfriend. And
That sucks.
Wow.
so like I just got done
like-
with all this election stuff. And then I'm like, and then literally like my washing machine like explodes, right? So I'm like, can I catch a break here, guys? Like,
no,
can
your
some-
washing machine was too excited that
Yeah.
Biden won.
It
Just like,
was. It was
"Ooh,
very
let's
exciting.
celebrate.
Yes. It was, yeah, I was trying to shower me with champagne,
Right? So
aka soapy water.
Oh my god,
Yeah.
that's crazy.
That was
That's crazy,
my
though.
story for the week. Of,
there we go. That feels
Wow,
good, right?
that was
Talk
a
about
good
it.
story.
so I was like, oh, be done with that. It's all zip
Well,
ties are in place.
Hey, at least you got that resolved though. I'm glad to hear
Yes.
that.
That's
No,
true.
thanks.
Mike, what's your rant for today?
You go first. I don't have a big rant, but you
So
go
for me, it's not a rant. And I decided I'm just gonna I'm gonna give updates because I've been following this online poker controversy, right? So like I'm in the poker community, and they're talking about this Daniel Negreanu, very popular poker player,
Yep.
and Doug Polk, who is he used to be an online poker player as well, and now he does more YouTube videos and stuff. So they have been butting heads for many years, right? So they decided, hey, let's do a heads up poker match, like a grudge match. So what they did was each of them put up $1 million into a bank account and online, and then they're gonna play 100, 200, or 200, 400 heads up, no limit poker. And they're like, they started out 200. The first 200 hands would be live, and so they video recorded it, streamed it, and so they had the 200 hands live. But they're gonna play 25,000 hands total, and the rest of it's gonna be online. So the first 200 hands, Daniel Negreanu, popular poker player, he's a live player. He's also a tournament player. He's not a heads up player. So he won the first one by like $100,000. He won like $100,000 first 200 hands. And then they went online, and then it swung the other way completely. Because that's Doug Polk's thing. Like, he is an online heads up player. He played for a lot of money for a long time. He got up to almost $300,000 from negative 100 to positive 300. And then I see like now the last couple rounds they've done total now is 1,700 hands, and Daniel has come back and he's up $25,000.
Wow,
So
that's
he's
pretty
come
close.
back a little
Holy
bit. So they
shit.
played 5 total rounds so far. And if I don't have a rant, I'm just gonna update you guys on what's going on here, because
You think is it fair? Is it fair the way they're doing it?
it's pretty fair, but like Daniel Negreanu has like a disadvantage for sure, because he's just not he doesn't play cash. He plays cash a little bit, but he doesn't play heads up,
It's not heads up,
and he doesn't
yeah.
play online. And there's a lot of tells that you get from like in person
Yeah, that's
that
true.
you don't get online.
But that means the other person has a disadvantage when he plays in person though.
Yeah, but they only play the first 200 hands in person, and the rest are online.
That sucks.
So there's still like
that means Negreanu is a
2,400, 2,300 hands.
well,
23,000 hands.
That means Daniel right now is actually doing better than
He's doing
expected
better than
because-
expected. They were giving him 4-1 odds that he was gonna lose, like 4-1.
Wow.
Good for him though.
Yeah, and he's doing really well.
I was gonna
so
say,
far.
put some money on him. That's
I don't know. I don't know. It's very early. Only 1,700 hands, but 25,000 total. I'll keep you guys updated on this.
makes me miss Lake Tahoe from California. I used to love going.
I love Tahoe. I try.
So
Actually,
pretty.
I think what's called Robert's gonna go there soon.
I'm gonna
yeah.
be there a few times. I'm gonna go in December and then
Yeah.
Yeah.
hopefully in January, February.
Yeah, I actually
I love Tahoe.
this year's my first time going during summertime. It was gorgeous. I'm gonna go back.
Yeah,
every
I saw your pictures. It
I was
looked
like,
awesome.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I usually go there at least once a winter now for the past 3
Yeah.
years. So
It's so beautiful.
yeah,
The
Yes.
water's so pretty.
yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know. I want to go. I want to go back again just for snowboarding either in December or January. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
for sure.
We're gonna be there in January. You should definitely come.
Well, is it January? I think we're gonna do Salt Lake City. I don't know. Side topic.
We'll figure it out. We'll figure it out
All
offline.
right. So
That's an
my-
offline conversation.
All right. So my rant is not really a big rant. So my neighbor decides to back out into my car, hit my door. So okay, so let me
Whoa.
backtrack. Hang
That's
on,
a
hang on.
pretty big rant. Like I would rant
I
about
would
that.
rant
Hang on,
about
hang on.
that too.
No, okay.
Shit.
So I never park my car in the street. Okay, I usually park along with my roommate in this driveway. And but I was being nice. I got there a little bit early. So you know what? I'm gonna let my roommate park there and stuff. So I parked my car in the street for overnight for one night only. And then the next morning, my roommate comes back. He goes running first, and then he comes back and says, "Hey, you have a note in your car?" I'm like, "Why?" And then note said, "Hey, this is your neighbor. Sorry that I hit you." And I reversed. I didn't see your car back there, and so I went out and looked for them. Like, okay, I can see I can see which car he used to rear end me, but his bumper's nowhere near as past my back door. It's like I have a giant dented back door. I was pretty calm about it. At least he let them know. He let who it was. He let his
Right.
number. So okay, so and this is why I'm not saying it's not the biggest rant. It's because he admitted his fault. If it was a hit and run, that's a different story. You know what I mean? So,
Yeah,
but
that-
anyway,
Yeah.
yeah.
Holy
But anyway,
crap.
so I never park my car there. The only time I do in the street, I get hit. So you know what? Never park in the car in the street. That's all I'm saying. In my
I
street.
always have to be careful when I back out of my garage because my driveway, there's always cars like back
That's
there.
true.
And I don't have a backup camera on my car. Like my
Me
car,
neither. I
is
don't have like a
ancient.
camera in my car either.
yeah. So I'm like, I just have to be extra careful, like when I'm pulling out, like that I don't hit any of the cars
Yeah.
around.
Oh my god, that's crazy.
But my roommates are parked in the street all the time though, in the same spot,
Oh,
and they
and
never
they
got
forget-
hit.
Do you have a dark color car? What color is your car?
No, so my roommate has a black car, a black
Oh.
Honda, right? Mine's a green Toyota Camry, so it's not dark.
Yeah.
Okay,
You
And
can't blame
he-
it on the being too dark in the morning.
No, and he parks there every single day. The
That's a
only
little
ti-
bizarre. Yeah.
Yes, I know that. And the only time I was being nice, I'm gonna park there. I'm gonna let my roommate park in this drive. I told him, no, well, I'm parking my car in the drive. I said, you guys park in the streets.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Dang. That means your neighbor has it out for your car specifically.
I don't know. And this is the first time I came back from Florida. So I was moving my stuff, and then literally 3 days after moving in back my stuff, that happened. I was like, great, cool.
Wow, that's crazy.
I know, right? All right, let's close it up this episode. So, Brittany, you want to, share where people can find you?
Yeah, you want to pimp
Yeah,
anything?
sure.
Yeah.
It's at Brittany Nethers on Twitter. Feel free to reach out. I'm also at Britty Britty on Instagram. So feel
Above, right, Robert? So
Oh,
Yeah,
is
we
it
have
above?
a,
at Brittany Nethers on Twitter. So if you want
Right,
to
for me, it's down this way.
feel free to reach out to me if you want to continue the conversation, or if you're thinking about running for office and kind of want to know what it takes. I've been working with a lot of local candidates, so I'd be happy to help.
Yeah, that'd
There
be
we
awesome.
go.
Leave a comment if you're gonna run for office. I would love to see who's
Yeah, me too. I would-
looking forward.
Who's running?
Yeah.
Let's fix this system from inside of it. You know,
There we go.
Yeah.
Locally first, right? For local level first,
definitely.
All right. Well, listen, we appreciate everybody from here and for tuning in. For those who are watching us on YouTube, please don't forget to like this video and to smash that subscribe button. All right.
Yeah,
On
and
to-
if you want to see other podcasts, go to our website www.gfothoughts.com.
That's right. Our website's live. I keep forgetting about that.
Yeah.
it's only been 5 weeks,
Yeah, it's only been a little while.
All right, Brittany, thank you for your time. Appreciate it.
Thank you guys for having me on. This is great. Thank you.
Thank you. Until next time, everybody. Thanks.
Peace.
Thanks for joining us for this episode of the Gluten Free Organic Thoughts podcast. As always, we appreciate you. If you are watching us on YouTube, please don't forget to subscribe to our channel, like this episode, and leave us a comment. If you are listening to us, please leave us your honest review on your preferred podcast listening platform. And as always, you can find us on social media at Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at GFOT Thoughts. Drop a comment and give us some feedback. We would love to hear from you. Until next time, see you then.